Good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Burish, and I'm the coordinator of the Professional Development Core of the Dakota Community Collaborative on Translational Activity. Today, we will be going into a discussion regarding innovation and commercialization in research. And to get us started, we will be first speaking with Dr. Baugh of the University of South Dakota and Beth Lambeth, our Technology Transfer Officer, to go into further detail on what brings us all here together today.
All right. Well, are people able to hear me all right? Excellent. So thank you, Christian. As he had mentioned, my name is Baugh. I am the director of the Professional Development Core, and happy to see everyone here, both in person and online. I definitely appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a busy time of year to learn a little bit about tech development. So I wanted to start off by thanking, firstly, Christian for organizing this. I know it was no small feat to interact with 3 different campuses, NIH, figure out who to call. We just switched our food vendors, switching from Aramark to Sodexo. So that was wonderful to see the first order go through, and I'm happy to report that I think the food's actually quite a bit better than what we were seeing with Aramark, and seeing a lot of nodding in the room. So I don't think we're allowed to officially endorse anything, but so far Sodexo looks great. Also like to thank NIH for playing a big role in this, and we'll have introductions of each of the individual members as they come up, but definitely appreciate taking the time out to talk to people in North Dakota, South Dakota about all of the wonderful things NIH can do to help people develop their technology to perhaps acquire funding for that technology and so on. Also like to thank USD Biotech for helping sponsor this, getting the word out amongst their members that this event is going on. Of course, our tech transfer office, and you'll hear a whole lot from Beth later on, but Beth, if you'd like to just come up and wave for a second so people can see. Yep, you're good.
Nice. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for including me in this workshop. I am really excited for what we're about to learn today, and I appreciate being included in this initiative with all the institutions. So thank you for putting this together. Thanks.
Of course, love to thank IT for making sure that everything is working properly at all of the various campuses. And then, of course, administrative support for booking rooms and things of that nature. So with that out of the way, I can say a little bit about why Christian and I thought that this would be a great thing to do. So as part of our job in the Professional Development Core, we deal with a wide range of investigators that are working on all sorts of different types of research. And it became clear that a lot of these research projects that they were working on had the potential for developing into IP, and perhaps even going after some of these funding sources that are there to help investigators bridge that gap between basic science, translational research, and then out to actual product development. But when speaking with investigators that are pursuing this technology, it became readily apparent that there's not a whole lot known about how to go about that, what sort of funding is available, and just even what we mean when we're talking about these types of concepts. So we wanted to give a relatively informal venue for people to be able to start to have these conversations. And in interacting with Beth in the tech transfer office, and I'm sure she'll talk about this as well, it became even more apparent that there's certainly a need to get the word out across certainly the University of South Dakota's campus, and I'm guessing, if not fairly certain, that this is the case at all of the other campuses as well, about what tech transfer does, what they can do to help investigators, and what that process is. Basically, it's an opportunity for us to introduce your tech transfer officers to you and to say, hey, these are people that you can talk to if you have any interest in doing this. So it's not going to be an authoritative resource by any means. After this workshop, you're not going to be able to go write an SBIR or STTR and have it successfully funded. That'll require a little bit more work, but it'll put you in touch or at least aware of the people that can help you do those things, whether it be at your campus, whether it be through NIH. I'm sure they would be more than happy to talk to you about ideas and things. And I'll leave the particular discussions to those aspects for those later sessions. But in general, these are all resources for you to be able to pursue that type of research. So basically starting to get you thinking about less traditional methods of securing funding for your research, and also some ways to pursue tech development. So we're going to be highlighting some specific programs that may be available, and of course, again, highlighting the resources that are available on your campuses. And lastly, of course, it's a great excuse for breakfast for those of you that are in person. So I thought to start it off, I'd tell you a little bit about my road to or down the IP pathway, so to speak. So I do currently have one granted patent, and we have at least another disclosure that's sort of in the works, have a startup company that's there. So have gone down this road a little bit. And I thought a great place to start would be saying what sort of got me interested in this. And it came from a sort of weird source. So I had a conference in New Mexico a number of years ago and was talking to a colleague, and they were mentioning how their startup company was actually just contacted by people that work for Elon Musk. And in speaking with them, he was saying, yeah, well, we do neuromodulation and EEG. And in the press, there was a little bit of rumors about Elon becoming involved in brain-computer interfaces, which this type of research would be very in line with. So he was very excited about this. You know, this is their big break. They're going to get acquired by this huge company. All of their research woes will go away because they'll have unlimited funding and power, and they'll be famous, and they'll ride around in Teslas or whatever else was going to happen. So certainly took the meeting and did not meet with Elon at all. He wasn't present, but his team was. And it became very apparent that they had absolutely zero interest in any of the technology that the company had. They liked the name. They wanted the name of the company. So thought it would be easiest just to acquire the company and let them have all of their technology, but the name was of interest. So you can imagine he was a little disappointed. Still got a fairly, from what I recall, decent amount just for, you know, hey, yeah, you can have this name. We'll come up with another name and we'll keep doing our thing. But I'm fortunate. Well, unfortunately for them, they didn't make billions of dollars off of the deal, but that got me thinking, you know, this is something that academics actually do in their, I don't want to say spare time, because none of us really have spare time, but as a way to progress their research. And that got me thinking, well, why would an academic want to do this, right? You know, personally, and I won't speak for everyone in the room, you know, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to, you know, like go on Shark Tank and pitch my idea about what we're doing. But it became clear in talking to people that were involved in this sort of thing that it's not just about making money personally. It's a way to, again, get alternate funding for the types of research that you're interested in and that may allow you to do things that traditional granting mechanisms may not. It allows you to, if you want to think about things from a, you know, do good for the world, which I'm sure is why some of us got into research, it allows you a different both business model and marketing strategy and path to getting whatever it is you're developing into the hands of people that could actually benefit from it. So you don't have to think that your technology or what you're doing is going to make you a millionaire. And if it does, hey, great. But it's a way for you to start protecting that intellectual property so you can move it to market and get it into hands of people that are interested or that would benefit from it without having to take the 30, 40 years that typically transpires when you're going from just a basic research idea in the lab, because then it has to be picked up by someone that actually has interest in business development and things. And you just think about how many really cool ideas have been completely dropped because there wasn't anyone that was aware of it to take it from research to market. I'm certain there's a lot of really good ideas that just never made it because there weren't those people at the helm. So again, you don't have to be the person at the helm, but it's good to be aware of these things to allow you to think about or to start making those initial steps to get your product from the bench into the hands of consumers. So that's really what was exciting about it for me, was this idea that, hey, this stuff that I'm doing, it's great if it secures grant funding, it's great if it results in, licensing agreements and things, but what it's all about is developing something that's going to be useful and then seeing its utility. And one of the ways to really allow you to do that is by going through this intellectual property avenue. So with that, I know we're running ahead. People that know me probably thought a 30-minute intro is not out of the realm of possibilities for me, as I do like to talk and get off track at times. But this time I'm actually, 5, 10, 15 minutes ahead. So we can start the session off nice and early. With that, I can certainly hand things over to Dr. Prakash.
Thank you, Dr. Baugh. Yeah, great introduction and nice story. I didn't know anything about the Elon Musk piece there, and the fact that they're only interested in the name was nice. It was a nice touch there. So, and thank you to you and also to Christian and Beth Lambeth. I have to give a lot of sort of kudos to Christian, because he reached out to us. How he found us, I have no idea. But he persevered, and we were happy to help. So I'm Gautam Prakash. I work for one of the 27 institutes and centers at the National Institutes of Health. So those who think that the NIH is a monolith, it isn't. It consists of a lot of very different parts, and those different parts do things in different ways. And because this is more of a cancer play, we thought we would get our colleagues at the National Cancer Institute involved. And so the original request from Christian was, could you talk about intellectual property and some of the issues involved? And we're certainly happy to do that, and that'll come all the way at the end. But as Lee pointed out, I think that it's very interesting to know what other programs are on offer. The NIH is not the staid institution that you may think of it, or the way it used to be 50 years ago. We actually, in addition to giving basic research grants, which is what most of you probably know of, and SBIR, or small business grants, which some of you might know about, we actually do a lot more other products and services help that you may not have heard of. And we want to go through some of that today, so we can get you the help of not only funding, but also the other resources that you need to be able to successfully commercialize your technologies, because at the end of the day, that's really what we care about. We care about getting products and services into patients, and we do it for the most altruistic reason possible. None of us make any money out of any of the companies that we fund. We only do it because it's good for the patients and good for healthcare system in general. So with that, I'm actually going to start with my friend and colleague from the National Cancer Institute, Dr. Jonny Franca-Koh, who is kindly is going to tell us about the SBIR program in general and how it's set up, but also about how NCI, the National Cancer Institute, does it, because as I said, I think most of you will be applying to NCI. And then we'll follow up with where I come from, the National Heart, Lung and Blood Institute. We'll have 2 presentations by 2 of my colleagues and very good friends. We've worked together for many years, and you can see how we do it slightly differently. So Jonny, if you're ready, I will hand it off over to you.
Thank you, Gautam, and everyone at USD. Really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you early in the morning there. And I'm jealous about the breakfast. Haven't been to a seminar with food for a long time, working from home. So let me just start by sharing my screen. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Okay, is that showing up for people? Okay, great. Oops, I need to start at the beginning too. Okay. Okay, well, good morning. My name is Jonathan Franca-Koh. I'm a program director at the NCI's SBIR Development Center. And as Gautam said, I'll be talking to you today about mainly the small business programs and funding opportunities at the NCI. But I will also try and generalize that as much as possible to some of the things that apply also to the other NIH institutes and centers. So a little bit about myself. So I've been a program director at the NCI's SBIR Development Center for 8 years now. And it's been great so far, but I appreciate Lee's story as well. It was the first time I've heard of that kind of thing about making money from selling the name of the company. So that's a great another creative way to spin out your technology and creative name development. So and Christian will make these slides available to all the attendees. He'll send them out later. And but you have my email here. You can also find me on the website. And I look forward to this being a start of a conversation. I've got a lot of slides that I'll try and get through, but I do want to save some time for questions at the end. So right after I finish my presentation, I'll be happy to take some questions. And then I know we also have an extended panel discussion later. So I look forward to discussing with you today and hopefully following up with many of you by email and phone calls later. So the SBIR program it participated by 11 different federal agencies. Department of Health and Human Services, which the NIH is part of, is one of the larger, the second largest of these. And at the NIH, as Gautam said, we're not a monolith. We are 27 different institutes and centers, largely divided by a disease area or organ type. And we're one big happy family, as I'm sure my colleagues will agree. So I'm representing the NCI today. And I just want to also pause on this because as you contemplate submitting your grant applications or figuring out who to contact, this kind of map will be very helpful to you to decide who best is the person to make contact. So the NCI's mission is to alleviate suffering from human cancers. But this can have an overlapping mission with other institutes. So for example, NIBIB, the Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Imaging, they have an interest in developing novel imaging techniques which can apply to cancer and things like that. So it's worth kind of considering your narrow focus, but also being aware that there could be overlapping interests at the NIH. Okay. So the SBIR and STTR programs, which I will focus on today, are overlapping congressionally mandated programs that have set aside funding requirements. So all federal agencies at an extramural R&D budget greater than 100 million set aside 3.2% of that for SBIR. And for STTR, this is slightly restricted. So agencies that have a R&D budget greater than $1 billion set aside 0.45% of that. So that works out at the NIH to total about $1.2 billion. And at the NCI, this amounts to about 180 million. So our mission, broadly the NCI, is to develop innovative cancer technologies with the potential to help people live longer and healthier lives. And so our vision is to create an ecosystem that will really help create a groundwork for innovators and propel them to find the solutions and also to make entrepreneurship possible for all. And so our office is dedicated to that mission and vision. And you can find us online at sbir.cancer.gov. And we're a team of 12 program directors. Although actually we're down to 10 now. We had 2 recently leave. And we'd definitely be happy to connect with you. to discuss your ideas and help you further. So we perform 6 kind of core activities in this office, kind of central administration of about 400 grants and contracts of SBIR at the NCI. We also spend a lot of our time guiding potential applicants in developing their applications, preparing resubmissions, discussing different funding options for them, do outreach events such as today's, look at how we can maybe seed technology emerging areas through new grant and contract opportunities. We try and create a network where we connect with investors and other kind of strategic partners and enable them to interact more closely with academic entrepreneurs and other small businesses. And then provide training, which I will touch on a little bit. So our portfolio is pretty broad. Currently, we have 475 grants ongoing. This is kind of how it breaks down. Largest area is therapeutics, but we do have strong interest in medical devices for cancer, imaging, diagnostics, cancer biology. By that I mean kind of new technologies to enable and facilitate better cancer research, and then cancer control and epidemiology. So that would be kind of like prevention approaches, but also we bucket in there software, IT, and health information technology that's relevant to cancer and cancer care. So we think of the SBIR program and STTR as a 3-phase program. So phase 1 funding is a kind of first level of funding that we offer, and this is to provide money for proof of concept studies. At the NCI, this can go up to a maximum budget of $400,000. Phase 1 projects are typically 6 to 12 months in length. And then upon completing that, you can apply for then a phase 2, which is for further research and development. For this, you need to also submit a commercialization plan. And this level of funding offers up at the NCI up to $2 million over 2 years. For SBIR, not STTR, companies may apply directly for phase 2. So that's called the direct to phase 2 option, where if you already have your proof of concept data in hand, and I'll be happy to discuss later, what we mean by proof of concept, then you can show that in your preliminary data and apply directly for the phase 2 funding. Another option is what's called a fast track, which is when you submit a combined application for both a phase 1 and phase 2. So the application has both phases buried in it. And this allows you then to, if successful with that, then you receive initially the phase 1 funding. Upon completing that and verifying that you have indeed met the milestones, then you will transition directly to the phase 2 project without having to go through the whole peer review process. And then upon completing phase 2, NCI and some other ICs offer what's called the phase 2B or Bridge Award program, and this is for further technology validation and clinical translation. You need to have completed the phase 2 application project. And at the NCI, our program offers up to $4 million of funding over 2 to 3 years. And a key requirement, though, is that to be competitive, you need to raise substantial third-party investment funds, at least 1-to-1 matching. And then our goal is to transition ultimately into what Congress calls phase 3, which is commercialization and the sale of your technology to the market. I agree the names could have been chosen better. It's confusing in our world where clinical trials follow the same kind of nomenclature, but I want to just introduce you to that now so that you are aware. And so as I discuss phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I'm talking about funding, not clinical trials. Okay, and so here I'll touch on, I've highlighted previously our budget caps, which at the NCI, as I mentioned, were $400,000 for phase 1 and $2 million for phase 2. But this can vary at the different institutes. And I think most of the NIH have hard caps of 252,000 for phase 1 and 1.68 for phase 2. So please check with the relevant institutes as you develop your applications to really confirm that. And there's a link here that talks about waiver topics. So the NCI offers these caps that I mentioned for what we consider to be waiver topics, where we've received special approval from the Small Business Administration to go above these hard caps here in the middle. But our waiver topics are very broad and pretty much capture our entire portfolio. Okay, and so just to start off, we want to mention some success stories that have happened. So one is a company called Allegro Diagnostics, which was initially funded through R21 and then R01 grants to Dr. Avram Spira. Based on that research, he spun out a company called Allegro Diagnostics that was awarded SBIR phase 1, phase 2 grants, and then ultimately reached commercialization, and the company was in fact acquired later. And his testimony is that NCI was really able to kind of catalyze that development through both academic and the small business grants. And so, we hope that we can be part of similar stories coming out of your institutions. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of walk you through the process of going from an idea to an award. Having an idea, that's your part. I can't really help you there, but happy to discuss your ideas with you. And the first question is determining, is going for an SBIR or an STTR grant a right step for you? So let's think about, what are some of the reasons people seek SBIR funding. So firstly, we provide seed funding for very early stage technology, and we're not alone, so that this is non-dilutive funding. No repayment is required. As Gautam mentioned, our intents are completely pure. Government can be a friend. And as part of that, you retain the intellectual property rights that come out of any grants that we fund. And in addition to funding, SBIR awards help provide you with recognition, verification, and visibility. People know that in order to receive one of these grants, your application has gone through a very rigorous and competitive peer review process. And so, landing one of these grants is a mark of success that the community recognizes, which hopefully can help you, leverage that into additional funding or support. I think, pretty much in all cases, especially in the cancer field, SBIR is part of your funding plan and path to commercialization. We very rarely can be, the entire support for you getting there. And so we're part of that and part of this ecosystem. So as I will touch on a little bit more in my next slide, to apply for this, you need to, the applications need to be submitted by a small business. But there's more than, but there's several paths to doing this. So, the most obvious is form your own company, have a good name, sell the name, start another company, and then go from there. Or you can also partner with existing small businesses through licensing deals, which I'm sure Beth and Lee and maybe Gautam also will touch on. Another option is that's kind of a newer model, is that there are some kind of incubator-like models where they will kind of work and license technology from universities to kind of help you kind of incubate your business idea and then maybe get spun out later on. But the bottom line is that you need to have a small business in order to apply. So what do we mean by that? It needs to be organized for-profit business based in the United States. And by small, we mean you have 500 or fewer employees, including affiliated companies. And it needs to be majority owned by US individuals and independently operated, or it can be controlled by another company that is itself meets that requirement. For SBIR, we do allow multiple companies that are majority owned by venture capital companies, hedge funds, and other private equity firms to be part of that, but that's only SBIR. Okay, so now having had your idea, having figured out which company it is that you'll be working to apply via, you next need to identify a funding opportunity. So I've now to kind of pause and cover the differences between the SBIR and STTR mechanisms. The main one is that whereas SBIR grants allow a small business to partner with research institutions such as universities, the STTR program requires that the company has a formal collaboration with the university. And they need to have a signed agreement related to that. There are also some differences in the allocation, how the work is divided. So for an SBIR, at the phase 1 grant level, up to 1/3 of the funding may be allocated to a collaboration with a university, and 50% in phase 2. The STTR requires that a minimum of 40% work is done by the small business, and a minimum of 30% is allocated to the partnering nonprofit research institution. The remaining 30% can be allocated to best fit the needs of the project. And another important difference is the rules about the principal investigator. So under SBIR, the principal investigator needs to be majority employed. That means at least 51% of their time with the small business for the duration of the project period. For an STTR, there are no, the PI can be either employed at the university or the company. So that's not stipulated, but it is required that they allocate a minimum of 10% effort to the project. And another thing I'll just highlight here is that it's for the duration of the project period. So if you're, have the intent, for example, to join a company if an award is made, that's fine. You can just explain that in the application through a letter of support. You don't need to have that employment with the small business in place at the time of application. It just needs to be put in place at the time of award. And again, award is always made to the small business, and so these partnering relationships will be then done via subcontract. So the money will flow to the small business, and the business will then pass on that funding to the university as a subcontractor. Okay. So we also operate through both grant and contract mechanisms. I'll provide further details later, but broadly speaking, the omnibus solicitation is where most of our applications come in, and this is for investigator-initiated ideas, where you tell us your idea, the NIH will then kind of allocate you to, or match you with the right NIH institute, and then you go through the whole peer review process. We also have targeted funding solicitations that have kind of broad topic areas that we want to kind of encourage funding in. And I'll mention some of these in my next slide. But I also want to touch on contract opportunities, which are designed to identify very kind of focused areas of study where we are strongly interested in funding. These are areas that NCI has identified as having kind of strong technology and scientific priority, but also think will be of commercial interest. And so, yeah, the key difference between grants and contracts are listed in this table. The main one being the scope, where the contract is very defined by the NIH. Peer review is also slightly different. There's only one due date per year for contracts. And we have set aside money for contracts. So I guess on this slide, what I want to highlight is that check out our contract topics. If your research area or idea is really closely aligned with the contract, there are definite advantages in applying to that, because we have set aside money for these particular research areas. There's flexibility after the peer review, where if we see your application, we like it, but maybe there were some issues that kind of brought the score down a little bit, there is an opportunity for the NIH to negotiate with the company and kind of strengthen those areas if we like the idea enough. Trade-off, though, is that there is slightly more burdensome reporting requirements under contract topics. My program is frozen. Not the time to do that. Let me just hold on. Christian, could you pull up the slides just in case I can't resolve this in a minute?
Stop sharing and try resharing again.
Yeah, it's not doing that either. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Yeah, my computer's jammed. Okay. All right, I stopped sharing. Okay, it's come back. Hold on. So I will go back and share my screen again. Okay, you can see it again?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, and so NCI has a bunch of contract topics, which I won't read out for the sake of time. Other NIH institutes have also released a bunch. There's a link to the contract solicitation that you can find on my slides, and also via our website. So do give a look, and if you're a close fit, consider them for sure. I'd say if don't try and force a connection, though. If it's not a good fit, if it feels forced, then probably I would recommend go through a grant opportunity. Okay, don't do this. Okay, so what are some of these funding opportunities? I've listed them out here. So we have Omnibus, we have one for highly innovative tools for single cells, technologies for low resource settings, single molecule protein sequencing. And I'm going to touch on some of the key ones here. But also note, we have some opportunities have standard due dates. So for the Omnibus, for example, these are 3 times a year. The next one coming up is September 5th. But some of the others have non-standard due dates. Okay. First one I'd like to highlight here, which I think will be of interest to this audience, is a new funding opportunity called the Small Business Transition Grant for early career scientists. So this is a grant opportunity modeled on the K99R00 grant, where we're trying to create a path for postdoctoral researchers to take an entrepreneurial track. And so this is where the Small Business Transition Grant comes in. So it's a unique fast track funding mechanism where the phase 1 is an STTR, but when you transition, you actually become an SBIR. So what this means is that in the phase 1, the PI needs to be a postdoc, and there needs to be a mentoring plan that's part of the application. But when the grant transitions, the postdoc will need to be able to meet the SBIR PI requirements, so be majority employed by a small business at the phase 2. It's also required that, in addition to the mentoring plan, that they participate in the ICOR training, entrepreneur training program that we've created at the NIH. Some other information is that in terms of eligibility, the proposed PI needs to be a maximum of 8 years from their terminal degree, so PhD or MD. And we particularly encourage people from underrepresented groups to apply. Mentoring, as I mentioned, is an important part of the application. And that you need to identify both a technical mentor and also a business mentor, so someone who can mentor the technical side of things and the commercial side. And there needs to be, in addition to identifying, there needs to be a clear plan about how these mentors will work with the PI over the course of the grant to help strengthen them and prepare them for a career as an entrepreneur. But the technology development is as important. And it's expected that the phase 1 application includes clear go, no-go milestones, and that these need to be met in order for the grant to transition to its phase 2. So we're not guaranteed, the goal is not just training. There needs to be clear success on the technical side as well. So the next due date for this is August 22nd of this year. If you're interested, please do submit a letter of intent by July. Information can be found if you click that link when you get my slides. That takes you to the funding opportunity. Okay, another opportunity I'd like to highlight is the SBIR Concept Award. This is for contracts, and here we're looking for transformative technology. So here the emphasis really is on looking for innovation and even risky projects. We have a very clear expectation that there's no need for preliminary data in this. And the funding is to provide to support work to obtain initial kind of proof of concept de-risking data. The budget caps here are $300,000, and the focus also is on rare and pediatric cancers. And the slides have a link to the solicitation. But just to highlight some key points, it is for disruptive innovation. You have an opportunity to submit a white paper to get program input. So this is very different from most other contracts where there's very little interaction. Here you actually can submit a short white paper and get written feedback. The application is also very short, only 15 pages compared to about 50 for a standard contract. Preliminary data is not required. And we do have the intent to make these awards rapidly within 6 months. So as I said, there's only one due date. There was a webinar that happened, but that was recorded, and the link here will take you to that. And you can also contact the email address here. Phase 2B Bridge Award is an important part of our work, and it's really to help kind of bridge that valley of death between completing your phase 2 and having a chance at commercialization or a business exit. It provides up to $4 million over 2 to 3 years, and you're eligible for this once you complete your phase 2. It can be either a phase 2 project at the NCI, another NIH institute, or even at another federal agency, provided that the project really clearly links to cancer. So this is something to hopefully have on your radar if you're successful with the phase 1 and phase 2 grants, and I'll be happy to talk to you about how you can use this to hopefully incentivize funding to raise that matching funds that are required. Okay, so now I'll go over briefly some application tips to help you get started in thinking about an application. So number 1 is start early, don't procrastinate like me. These are some important resources here. The SF424 forms is the instructions, which has kind of, oops. Oh, I clicked the link. I see what happened. Okay. If you most questions you have are probably in that, but so do take a look at that. But of course, feel free to contact us too. There's also a tool called Project Reporter, which is an NIH database for all funded projects, which you can look at to kind of see what NIH is funding in your niche, your area, and you can we'll have a chance to look at the abstracts, so get an idea of what's out there. There are also some sample applications. NIAID has some here. Our website also has some cancer-focused ones too. Okay, so start early, because going from your idea to something on paper does take time. You want to use that time to refine your product, gain access to the equipment, resources, facilities, etc. that you'll need, assemble a strong team, and get letters of support, which do take longer than you hope for. Also, I want to highlight, in addition to funding your business, starting your business, you need to complete 5 different registrations in order to be able to apply. And you can click the link there to see more about that. And then I do recommend sending your specific aims to discuss. Now, as you think about your idea, a key distinction for SBIR versus more academic grants is you want to have a product focus with your SBIR and STTR applications. So for academic grants, which is probably what you're more familiar with, the emphasis is on the science, and your approach, your expertise team, etc., is all kind of geared towards strengthening the innovation of that science and the novelty of what you'll be discovering there. For these small business grants, there needs to be a clear product in mind. So you need to have a clear understanding of how that science will translate to a product, and that then will kind of inform how you put together the other parts of the application, your approach, making sure you have the right team to do that, the environment, and then in terms of as your grant is reviewed, the significance will be on has this product got a commercial potential? Is a clear competitive advantage of compared to other companies out there? Of course, the science needs to be strong and robust, but again, the focus is on the product. So refine that vision. Ways you can do that are talking to current and prior grantees. Collaborators who have grant writing experience are very useful. There are professional grant writers you can connect with, and do talk to NIH program staff. Okay, which is the next point here. This is our office. You can go to our website And under the Contact Us menu, you can see the members of our team and kind of look at our expertise and identify who it is would be maybe the best person to talk to. Or if you're not sure, you can also just drop an email to our office inbox, and you'll be connected with the right program director. For other NIH institutes, you can look at, every institute has a page, a website on their as small business programs, but you can also, under the project reporter tool, enter, for example, like an abstract or keywords. And then when you do a search, you'll be matched with program officials and program officers who have, a correct fit for you, and you can also connect with them that way. A good way to start your interactions with us is through evaluating your specific aims page. So draft that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but get something down on paper. This is also a key part of the application. It's a focal point for the application, and kind of the cornerstone. It's important to capture the essence of the application in there, describe your approach and quantitative milestones that you'll be accomplishing through this project, and highlight the innovation and significance. So as a general rule, start with the background, go into exactly the specific aims, which are the goal-based statements, where you'll briefly kind of highlight the key assays and models, as well as identify kind of quantitative milestones for each aim, and then provide context at the end. So we've actually done some webinars on this. And if you go to our website or just click this link, you'll find, I think they're about 10-minute videos where you can see how other people in the areas of therapeutics, diagnostics, digital health, and devices, went about creating a solid specific aims page. Other things to be aware about: the budget considerations. I've told you about the budget caps and kind of the allocation for both SBI and STTR. But one thing I want to highlight here is that you can also request under phase 1, under both phases, what's called technical assistance money. And this is for kind of non-R&D spending for things like analysis of your IP portfolio, freedom to operate, kind of market analysis, regulatory consultation with consultants, or things like that. For phase 1, the cap is 6,500. For phase 2, it's 50,000. So especially at phase 2, it's worth seriously thinking about that. But you need to have in your budget justification a clear explanation of how that money will be used, and it needs to kind of meet the requirements. So one thing here I want to highlight is also, and this is this blue box here, there's a key distinction between subcontracts, for example, like university collaboration, and fee-for-service activities, which conversely count as a direct cost to the company. So this can be useful in staying within these guidelines, especially at phase 2. So fee-for-service activities include, for example, work contracted to CROs or CMOs to do specific activities. So examples of that are, in phase 1, sometimes a company will work with a contract research organization, CRO, to do some animal studies to get in vivo proof of concept data. Those can be expensive, and phase 1 SBIs require that 2/3 of the work is done at the company, but we will actually count fee-for-service work done at the CRO as a company direct cost. So that would help you remain within that cap. Other examples can be manufacturing and things like that. What the grant specialist will look at is whether or not there are indirect costs associated with the funding. But if you have any questions, again, contact us. In the interest of time, I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. The review criteria are listed here. They're the same review criteria that the NIH has. but everything is kind of seen through kind of a commercial lens here. So for example, significance. Does the product address a significant problem that has commercial potential? Is there kind of market demand for the product? Things like that. And another point is, it is a very competitive process. This is a chart of our funding success rates, which clearly need to be updated, but they're similar now. So at NIH, generally the rule is, resubmissions are about twice as successful as first submissions, and overall success rate for us is about 15%. So, we obviously hope you get funded the first time, but remember the 3 R's. If you're not, remember you're not alone. So then review your summary statement, revise your application, and try again by resubmitting. And quickly, I'll go through some key other programs we have. So these are non-funding programs that are designed to provide assistance to companies. So we have various things. So the first one is the Application Assistance Program, which is free to companies. There's a short, simple application, which actually is the next round due very soon, May 23rd. So, but it is short and simple, so you can think about putting it together quickly if you want. And this program is for companies that have not previously received NIH, SBIR, or STTR awards, and we especially encourage applicants from idea states. And the program connects you with a consultant who will help you to put together your application, review the specific aims with you, and kind of guide you through that submission process. It does not provide a grant writer. So, there's still a lot of legwork on your part, but they do provide very good assistance to it, especially valuable if you've not gone through this before. Another thing I want to highlight is the I-Corps Entrepreneurship Training Program. So this is only available to people who have a current phase 1 award. It uses the I-Corps model that makes companies engage in customer discovery and interviews with at least 100 different people, and it's a fantastic experiential learning program. But it is only the NIH version is only available to people with phase 1 awards. The NSF program, though, I don't know specifically if there's one available to you guys, but I think most areas have one kind of available, even if it's virtual, that they can participate in. So definitely explore the NSF I-Corps program, which was the original and does provide very good training in these elements, especially the kind of helping you to understand your technology's commercial competitive advantage, understand the kind of business landscape that you're in, not only your customers, but other suppliers, investors, etc. It's a fantastic program and really help you kind of flesh out your ideas into a commercial plan. We have some webinars that are online that we've archived that you can take a look at. And these cover many important elements, such as protecting IP, which I know Beth and Gautam will be talking about how to do a strong phase 2 application. Something I've not had time to kind of discuss too much is your commercialization plan, which we have the webinars on, but is an important part of especially of the phase 2 application and phase 2B applications, where you really need to more than just in a general way show the commercial potential, but show that you've taken steps to kind of and have a clear plan of how you're gonna put that into effect. We have videos on kind of doing pitches to investors and kind of regulatory advice. So these are this is a great resource you can access through our website, and there'll be future ones coming up too. Investor Initiatives is a program to match companies we funded with investors in the area. This is for both phase 1 and phase 2 awardees. And we have a network of connections with people in pharma, in venture capital. And so by going through this program, you will at the very least receive feedback from these high profile investors. And then if selected, you will receive pitch coaching, mentoring. We will also fund you to go to industry events, such as conferences where you'll have a chance to pitch your company and ideas, and also get introductions. So that's one of the ways we can help you down the line. We also offer a program called CARE, Connecting Awardees with Regulatory Experts, where we support interactions with the FDA. But this again is mainly for our awardees. This is something you can look forward to if you receive an award. And also do check out our website. We have a number of events that will be coming up. You can and sign up for our newsletter, which will kind of keep you updated. Also open those emails when they come. There's a lot of information there. And then I want to highlight also, we do have just on the third Friday of every month, what we call office hours, where you can register to meet with an NCI program director. You can set up interaction that way, emailing my colleague Bryce, or just it's fine to contact us directly. But I would say just pick one of us and contact us. Don't email everyone at the same time separately. And so I'll just leave you on this note, another success story, a company called OncoImmune, which we funded in 2016 to develop a CD24 FC reagent. And we supported them, and they are now in clinical trials. They received also a supplement from us to look at the potential of their agent to treat COVID-19. And that actually led to them being acquired by Merck in November 2020 for $425 million. So again, thank you for your time. Hope it was worth your while getting up early. I know at least you got breakfast, so I don't feel too bad. But I do hope to hear from you. Get in touch with us through the ways I discussed, and I'll be happy to take some questions now as well.
Hey, Jonny, that was fantastic. We have two ways to do this. If those of you in the room can address your questions to Dr. Baugh, and if for those of you online, just type them into the chat, and Christian will read them out to Dr. Franca-Koh, who's provided a lot of information. And as you can see, the NCI, like a lot of other institutes, but NCI is one of the bigger ones, so they've done a really good job at making sure that they provide all these other services to you. So it's really worth taking the time to reach out to them and help you get your grant funded and be successful. So Lee, I will turn it over to you, and as those of you who are online can type it in, and Kristen will read it out for the next few minutes. So thank you, Jonny, and let's see if you have any questions.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that excellent talk. Definitely a lot of good stuff in there. Do we have any questions in the room here in South Dakota? I am not hearing any. Oh, no, we do have one. Yep.
So in regards to getting other outside fundings to support, is there pros, cons, things that you look to for an acceptance if we have other small business areas or other financing companies to assist? Does that really matter in the application? You know, they look more favorable that you have an outside, or less favorable because the outside entity might have some, you know, private industry might have a bias towards something?
Yeah, good question. Generally speaking, I would say that companies that can demonstrate, other sources of support other than, relying solely on the SBIR program will be more competitive, because that shows, your ideas have gone through kind of the due diligence and being able to win other investment. And so that generally is an advantage to a company. And so, if you've done that, is you highlight that through letters of support. I would say, sometimes even if those are just at the stage of talks, but there's serious interest, it's worth getting a letter of support from a potential investor, because again, that shows reviewers that, it's not just the applicant who's telling them how great they are. There's actually, people willing to put money where their mouth is and, take a risk on what was being proposed. And so that generally goes over well. With that though, it's, I'd say quality is better than quantity. So lots of kind of letters that are very generic saying, oh yeah, we're looking at it, is not as compelling as, one or two letters from someone who's, really serious and can really articulate clear reasons why they're, willing to support the project. But it's not a requirement. So I hopefully that answers your question. And then, I guess the commercialization plan of the phase 2 also does involve, you need to show, well, definitely for the phase 2B a fundraising plan, but it's also important in your just regular phase 2 commercialization plan to, path to market, as I said, very rarely is just going to be through SBIR funding. In the cancer field, there's just too much to do, it's too expensive. So there needs to be a plan how you're going to get there that is not just SBIR funding. And so articulating that in your commercialization plan is important too.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Do we have any other questions in South Dakota? All right, hearing none, we can see if there are any at North Dakota State. Do we have any questions there?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. I'm Dinesh Katti from North Dakota State University. And my question is about this grant mechanism. Since this mechanism is about, eventually leading to commercialization of the product, how important is it for the PIs to have a patent on the product, for the successful application, for the success of the application?
Thank you, Dinesh. I have to ask, did Gautam set you up with that question?
I did not.
No, I don't see anything in the chat here.
Okay, well, you've come to the right place. I mean, I'll give you a short answer, and Gautam will expand on that later. But yes, it's critical to have, a clear plan to how you're going to protect your ideas and income in order to make that commercially viable. I would say you don't necessarily need to have a patent granted. Of course, that's ideal. But, if you're at the earliest stage, you may have at least filed the provisional patent application, I would say is probably the minimum.
Okay.
I mean, and I guess that's for speaking to, like small molecules and biologics, things like that I'm referring to. I guess, some other fields, other ways to protect your IP are, other than patents, can be valid too. But I will let the expert talk on that, which is Gautam and Beth, rather than myself.
Thank you.
Dr. Franca-Koh is going to be around at the end of the formal presentation. So if you have any questions, please think them up. And I'll be happy to do it.
I can just add one thing I did not touch on so much. So if there are no other questions, I'll just add to what I presented regarding proof of concept and phase 1. So, what we call proof of concept can vary from project to project. But general rule, I would say, for therapeutics is that at the end of phase 1, we want to see some in vivo proof of concept data. So you need to demonstrate that your agent is effective in a relevant mouse model or animal model of cancer. And you can also use that as a guide then, whether you'll be competitive for a direct to phase 2 or fast track. So if you already have in vivo proof of concept data and you're going for an SBIR, you could be eligible for a direct to phase 2 application. But I would just say, if you're planning for a direct to phase 2 or fast track, definitely discuss with a program director before you do go that route versus a phase 1. And then for a fast track, whether or not you'll be competitive for that, I would say companies things that can make you more, so the things that reviewers will be assessing with a fast track is how risky they consider that phase 1 to phase 2 transition, whether or not you'll make your milestones. And I think that is a big guide. So things that can make you more competitive are, more preliminary data can kind of mitigate some of that risk. And also kind of a track record can help you. And overall, the advantage of the fast track is you don't need to you only go through peer review once, which is fantastic. But especially for, I'd say, less experienced applicants, it's the most challenging application to write. So definitely talk to us before you go for a fast track versus a phase 1.
Great. Thank you, Jonny. So we're wonderful on time. A fantastic presentation, Jonny. Really appreciate it. I was listening to it all the way through, and you hear about R01, R25, fast track, phase 1, phase 2, SBIR. And I've never heard anybody use the word omnibus more than NIH people. Nobody else in the whole wide world uses that word as much as we do. So it's complicated. The NCI has done a great job in having people to help you out. I think NHLBI, we have taken a slightly different tack towards that. And we've actually set up an office, which is run by my friend and colleague, Dr. Kathleen Rousche, and she'll talk to you about why the office exists, and how we at NHLBI do things slightly differently from NCI and the resources that we provide to you, because we want you to be successful. So Kathleen?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? So really happy to be here. And I was checking my email to see when Christian reached out, and it was 6 months as of yesterday. So Christian sent me an email, and I talked to Gautam because it was a IP issue. And he and I thought, wow, if he can find us, like Gautam said earlier, amidst everybody else at NIH, then hopefully we can help and provide some value. And so thanks to our partners in the DaCCoTA. Thanks to Jonny, that was an excellent presentation. Thanks for joining us here today. So as Gautam said, Kathleen Rousche, NHLBI Innovation Office, and we exist to help our innovators be successful. And I will walk through some of our programs and services that we offer and how we go about doing that. Can you share my slides, Christian?
In just a moment.
So the mission, I'll just start talking. The mission of the NHLBI is to turn discovery into health by providing research, training, and education programs to prevent and treat heart diseases. And there's 4 strategic goals for the NHLBI mission, and we support all of them, but we focus more on the 2 that are going to be on the right-hand side of the screen. That's developing a workforce, making sure people are educated in technology development processes.
I apologize, but it was showing the preview presenter view.
Okay, I don't see anything, so.
Sorry about that.
So we want to educate the workforce, and we want to advance translational research. Next slide, please, Christian. Next slide. So this, I just want to give a little bit of a background to our office, and then we can talk about, what we're trying to do. But I started here in 2010, and the office was established and approved in 2011. And the office was established after there was a study conducted on our return on our investment for our small business programs. And this isn't a return by dollar numbers, but really more of, are these companies being successful in the sense that they're making these products that are impacting patient health? And the study showed that we need to do a little bit better job at helping the projects and innovators be successful. So the recommendations were to start an office. And in that office, we manage proof of concept programs. And this would be one step prior to company formation. And the recommendations also said that this office should manage the federal small business programs for our institute. So we did that back in 2011. And in addition to running those programs, the recommendation was to put the staff you needed in there that had the right expertise to help that innovator understand all aspects of their science, the science and the business of the science, if you will. So we were able to create positions that were really unique for NIH. So we had a regulatory specialist, these are federal positions, a business development specialist, and then regular scientific staff to manage programs. So there were 3 of us initially, and over the years, we've been able to build up the office to about 12 full-time, part-time, fed, non-feds staff, and sort of have looked at our programs over time. We have a contractor on board to evaluate our programs and help us understand whether we're being effective. Some of the things we do, it's not a one touch and you get an investment, right? You meet an investor at a conference and then maybe 10 meetings later, you get investment. So our contractors help us think about how to deliver our services so that we are adding value. So our mission is really to speed up the way that discoveries and innovations are being turned into new biomedical products. And with a broader vision of having an educated community that understands how to bring technologies forward. We're working on 4 goals in the office right now. We want to create novel solutions to meet unmet medical needs. We want to broaden diversity, inclusion, and geographical reach of the small business program. So reaching out to DaCCoTAs and getting more applications from you, seeing more funded technologies is important to us. We want to lead training and educational programs so our innovators are well-versed in commercialization. And at the end of the day, we really want to make sure, as good stewards of this federal money, that what we fund is eventually impacting patients. Next slide. So this slide shows an overview of kind of where our office focus is. And we are a resource for both academic and small business innovators. And we provide a ton of innovator support. So the more formal proof of concept center programs we manage or are associated with in the office are the NCI and REACH programs, the Catalyze program, which my colleague Mike Pieck is going to talk about after the break, and the CAP program is a point of care technology program that we're associated with as well. We also manage the federal small business program, and Jonathan gave a great explanation of the programs and what they are. But once you're funded, I wanted to reiterate what Jonathan said, that you get your base grant and there's a ton of other supplemental support that's available to you. And some are geared towards diversity, hiring an underrepresented candidate, and some are targeting how to enhance your commercialization and get there a little bit quicker. So another thing that makes us special is that after you get this, the 4 more formal programs funding in your base grants, we couple that funding with really tailored product development expertise and support. So we provide guidance prior to applying, during your period of support, and then we also spend a lot of time helping our companies and innovators network with development partners as they move towards the private sector. Like I said, there's a big focus on innovator education in our office, and I'll talk about these a little bit in a couple of minutes, but we offer consultations and we offer opportunities for our innovators to get in front of specific partners they might need for commercialization. Next slide, please. So one of the ways we can offer this really tailored support is because we have this incredible team of advisory experts, and they have experience in areas that are critical for technologies to reach the market And they're also the areas where traditional scientists don't get a whole lot of training. So we can start with my colleague and good friend, Gautam Prakash. He's been on detail with us from the patent office on and off a couple different stints for many, many years, I think 2014 or 15, Gautam. So he spends a portion of his time helping our innovators. And we have 3 entrepreneurs in residence. Renee Arnold focuses on health economics and reimbursement. Kwame Ulmer is a regulatory specialist. And our newest addition is Kimberly Martin, and she has deep clinical trial design expertise. We also have Steve Flame, who's an investor in residence. He started a couple of cardio companies, has business development, commercialization strategy expertise, and can speak to whether what you need to do when you're trying to fundraise, is it an investable idea, et cetera. Next slide, please. So I wanted to mention, I mentioned that we manage proof of concept programs and the regular small business program. And I managed this program when I first started in the office. And the first, it's now a proof of concept center network, but this started as, and it's now 11 sites with multiple institutions, I think over 100. But the initial proof of concept center program was the NIH Centers for Accelerated Innovations. And this was supported only by the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. So it could only accept heart, lung, blood, sleep technologies. And a few years later, NIH was able to roll out a very similar sister program called the REACH program, Research Evaluation and Commercialization Hubs program. And that was in 2015. 3 sites were awarded. And then when the SBIR program was reauthorized a few years ago in 2019, we launched a second REACH program. And these programs were designed to, can you click the down arrow once, Christian, please? These programs were designed to develop early stage technologies in academic institutions, and that technology would be surrounded by a team of experts who understood the commercialization process, so that as that technology was developed, it was developed in a way that it was considering downstream business case requirements, thinking about IP, having a business plan, who's going to buy it, who cares. And so these academic technologies were being developed to be have new companies surrounded around them or to be licensed out. So for those of you who are not aware, the REACH, one of the 2019 REACH awardees is the Midwest Biomedical Accelerator Consortia. And the DaCCoTAs actually are part of this Embark Consortia, and they offer technology development grants for early stage technologies. So if you haven't heard of it, you want to check out their website, you should do that. This is really, next slide, please, interesting program, because it had a lot of unique characteristics that aren't your typical, NIH grant where we throw money over and you throw a progress report back and that's the end of the day. These are cooperative agreements. So there was a significant amount of NIH oversight, and we worked really hard with the leadership teams, and these were all kind of mini consortia. So we wanted to work with individual sites so that they were doing what they needed to do for their independent ecosystems there, but we wanted the program to operate as a whole, pulling best practices for technology development. And we were really successful in doing that. So we have the NCI program, REACH 1, REACH 2, the NIGMS has accelerator hubs that were funded for entrepreneurial education. So we have them in our proof of concept center program. So we've been working since 2013 to identify best practices and scale up and have adoptable practices that can go across the country. And some of the key differences in this program than other programs is that it was set up as a matching program. So you could get up to $400,000 in technology development funding, but you had to match the federal funds 1-to-1. So you had to find a non-federal match, and that was identified along with project management as the two, best attributes of the program, because they were unique. You had to, if somebody else was going to put money in non-federal funds into these technologies, they kind of had skin in the game, and they wanted to vet those technologies and do their due diligence to make sure they would be successful. We had a whole lot of training and resources surrounding this program. There was an educational component, as part of the grant application process. We have partners to review the technology applications that are coming in, FDA, the 3 centers at the FDA, CMS, NSF, the Patent Office. We had third-party payers, Kaiser Permanente, looking and providing feedback and suggesting to us and our awardees whether these technologies had potential, what were some of the problems if they thought there were challenges. And we were able to give that feedback right back to our sites and our innovators as they made their funding selections. And they could take that advice as they plan their product definition studies. So next slide, please. This just shows you the partners. This is pulled from the Embark Accelerated Consortia. So they have a lot of technology partners, and they're doing just what I explained. They're trying to develop these academic technologies so they can form companies. We can then they can apply to our SBIR program and be successful. Next slide, please. So I knew Jonny was going to cover a bunch of small business details, and he did a fabulous job. But I did want to highlight, did want to put a couple slides in here really for your reference with some links if you want to go back that are specific to the NHLBI Small Business Program. So our this slide shows kind of where we fund and what the percentages are. But I wanted to let you know that we do have, through our small business program, $120 million to spend on small companies a year. So just to reiterate what Jonny says, it's non-dilutive funding. You don't have to pay it back. You keep the IP. We just want, as an NIH, just want to see you be successful. So it's a really great program to apply to. And the program I just mentioned, the NCI and the REACH programs, those were intended to feed into these small business programs so that you would, and what we've seen with some of the results from that proof of concept center program is that those technologies coming out of that program that have applied for our small business grants have a higher percentage of getting funded on their first time, probably because of the way they were kind of brought forward and developed with that team approach. Next slide, please. I won't read through this, but the NHLBI covers heart, lung, blood, and sleep technologies. So this is a list of some of, I think, what's published on our website as priority areas. So if you're looking to what we fund, you can give us a call and we can let you know if it's anything, cancer related, like leukemia or something that would be covered over at NCI, but certainly call us early and we can have that discussion of what institute is appropriate for what you're developing. Next slide. I'll say omnibus just one time here, but these are the NHLBI omnibus links if you're interested in exploring them. And the next slide, please, shows some of our other special targeted funding announcements and opportunities. We do participate in the phase 2B awards that Jonny mentioned. We have one phase 2B Bridge Award, and we have a phase 2B Small Market Award. And diversity supplements I mentioned before, and different, you can look through these, but different areas where we're looking for applications, like notices of special areas or other ICs programs that we have joined because we think it's important and it's within our mission. As an example, Innovations for Healthy Living is the NIMHD, but we've joined onto that. So this is a list of some of the extras, that are open and available to you as an NHLBI innovator. Next slide, please. Jonny went through a lot of these, but when I say that, you can get your base award and layer other things on, there's really a lot that you can have access to once you get that base award. We also do have a couple of programs as you apply, an applicant assistant program. If you want to understand a little bit better the application process, we have some formal programs that you can apply to for pre-application support. So the last one here is more the advisory services and some of that personalized support that our office gives. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of that. Next slide, please. So we offer one-on-one consultations, and those are in the areas I mentioned earlier. We have traditional science expertise in the office through our liaisons in the heart, lung, blood, and sleep divisions. And then our office, has that extra non-science support in the commercialization areas that are necessary. So any individual, it's academic or small business, you can contact us and we will set up a consult and have a discussion. We also have a mentor network. This mentor network, I think we have about 80 individuals on it right now. It's made up of, outside of our regular staff, it's made up of external product development experts. And these folks have agreed to volunteer their time to support, a certain number of hours a year to support our small companies. We're right now in the middle of kind of reworking our mentor network, making sure everyone still wants to be engaged, making sure it's diverse and that we have all areas covered. So we're in the middle of a revamp of that. And then we also offer partnering opportunities and pitch coaching. And the way we do this is if a company is ready to go to a conference, we can go to the next slide, please. We can pay their registration, and we will also, leading up to the event, that team I showed you, our advisory experts, will pitch coach that individual so that their narrative, the story they're telling to the investor, is what the investor wants to hear and hits all the main points, not how cool your widget is, but really how you're going to make it different. What's the impact? Why are you developing this, and who's going to care, and how you frame that is really, really important. So our team spends a lot of time with the companies that we send to conferences, and we usually support the registration fees of up to 2 individuals so that you can have perhaps the CEO and then the CSO in attendance at the conference as they're meeting with partners and presenting. This shows what we did in 2021 for our conference support. We held or participated in 12 events. We funded 27 companies to attend these events, and we were able to pitch coach 41 of those events. So there's a couple of different ways we send the companies to conferences. For example, for the Bio meeting, we have a relationship with Bio where they might hold a couple of slots for us, and we coach that company and we send them on their way. So they're kind of presenting on behalf of themselves, having been coached by NIH. So that's one way we support our companies. And then we also, for certain meetings that are more tailored to our institute's mission, we will have what we call innovation showcases. And for example, for the American Heart Association, the last couple of years, we have worked with them to reserve session time, an hour and a half or 2 hours. And we find, 6 companies or so that we think are ready to go to that meeting and present in front of that and partnering audience. And that's the way we do it in a more NHLBI mission focused way. So those are the 2 ways we did it. What's color coded here in blue were the innovation showcases we participated in 2021. Next slide, please. And like I said earlier, it's sometimes hard. We work really hard to make sure these innovators are ready to go pitch and go talk to potential investors. And sometimes they go away and we don't know what the outcomes are. So like I said, we have the contractor on staff who helps us to assess what we need to do to really add value to our companies and their success. And the top part of this slide shows you some of the feedback we have gotten following sending companies to conferences. And, it seems that the information we're providing is pretty well received, and we're allowing these companies to make good connections with strategic partners, understand how to tell their story. The third one that's outlined in the box here was from a recent conference, and at that conference, this company met an angel group, and they a couple months or weeks later had agreed to pay for half of their seed round, which was $325K. And that's the outcomes for us, moving that technology, getting the work done. That's going to get that a little bit closer to the patient. That's kind of where we are. A couple outcomes from this past year. We had 2 NHLBI companies at last year's Angel Capital Association Summit be selected as pitch finalists. So they were able to kind of do a second pitch, which is a deeper dive into their technologies for the Angel Capital Association audience. We also recently, in the beginning of April, we had one of our companies win the Innovation Showcase at the American College of Cardiology. And that prize was registration for next year's meeting, as well as a booth in the exhibit booth for the American College of Cardiology, which is a whole, that exhibit booth was a whole, you know, the bottom of the convention center is filled with companies and strategics. And so it's a pretty prestigious prize, I think, for our company to win that. Next slide, please. These are some of the FY22 innovation showcases and new conferences with which we're engaging. I mentioned the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology. This year, we also attended the International Stroke Conference for an innovation showcase. And this was really fun because we were able to, so as you know, some projects we fund have dual assignments. You know, you might have heart device, so that might be Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, as well as the Bioengineering Institute, for example. So for this conference, we partnered with NINDS for the stroke conference, and we supported 8 companies in that showcase. 3 were ours and 3 were from NINDS, and we were able to, in our office, coach all those companies. So that was a new one, and it was very well received by the organizers. We just got back from the Respiratory Innovation Summit. This was piggybacked on the American Thoracic Society meeting, and it was very focused on having investors, strategics in the room. And there were 15 pitch competitions and pitches rather for a competition. And there was about 50 posters presented. So we supported, I think, 3 of our companies to attend that. And coming up this fall, the Heart Rhythm Society and the Life Science Women Conference, both of which have pitch events that will support our companies too if they get accepted. Next slide, please. So what I've been talking about is the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute Innovation Office. And I wanted to make sure for those of you in the room who aren't Heart, Lung, Blood, and Sleep, in addition to what Jonny mentioned from cancer, there was an office that was created in 2019. It was modeled after our office at the NHLBI. In fact, the person I started with, one of the 3 here, way back in 2010, eventually moved over to the Office of Extramural Research, and she was able to start the SEED office, Small Business Education and Entrepreneurial Development. And the SEED office has entrepreneurs in residence. It houses the small business program, provides a lot of innovator support. And this was fantastic because now there was an office that can support anything coming in through the NIH, you know, addressing anything in the NIH mission, whereas we're limited to heart, lung, blood, and sleep diseases. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the SEED office and their offerings, because it's a fabulous resource for you. Next slide, please. These are just, you know, some more tips that similar to what Jonny showed, what you might want to take a look at, sample applications, tips, what not to do, what to do as you apply. That's more of a resource for you. And the next slide, I think, shows that our office had put together some educational content. Can we, next slide, please? Oh, I'm not, maybe go back to. Oh, I don't see it in here. But anyway, there is a, we call it the Small Biz Hangouts. So we put a lot of content together several years ago that talked about IP, that talked about regulatory, business strategy, and it's on an NHLBI YouTube channel. So even though it was recorded a little while ago, the content is still accurate. So when Christian sends the slide out, I'll make sure to get that slide in there somehow. It got out of there. Next slide, please, Christian. Next. And then finally, so the NIH has a listserv through that SEED office. If you're interested in getting on their listserv, you can connect with the NHLBI. We have an inquiry form if you're looking for a consult in a certain area or just general small business advice. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for. And again, what Jonny said, contact us early. We want to hear from you. We are equipped to kind of give you guidance, whether you're ready for the Catalyze program, the formal small business program, you know, something different that we might offer. And we really, our goal is to help you be successful. So I think I'll stop there and take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Kathleen. We have a couple of minutes, and Dr. Rousche is going to be around at the end as well. So if anybody has a quick question now, we can have her answer it, or if not, we can table it until the end. So Lee, I'll turn it over to you, and Christian, if you see anything that has come up.
We have no questions at South Dakota. How about in either of our North Dakota locations? So NDSU or UND?
All right, well, you certainly know where to find us. And my friend and colleague, Mike Pieck, will be, I think we have a break coming up, and Mike's going to come back and talk about the Catalyze program, which is kind of born out of the NCI and REACH program, best practices, and some other translational programs we had, but I'll save that for Mike to talk about, but I'm looking forward to it. But thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. So we'll take a break now until the top of the hour. And then, as Kathleen said, when we come back, we're going to hear about actually a very, very interesting program that my friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Pieck, is going to talk about, and how all this stuff comes together. So you've heard from how NCI does things, you've heard how NHLBI has products and services that we offer. And so let's see how this plays out. It's going to be an interesting discussion and a presentation about how this actually works where the rubber hits the road. So look forward to seeing you all in about 15 minutes. Christian and Lee, are we ready to get back and started?
Yes, we're at the top of the hour here in South Dakota, so no better time than now.
Okay, fantastic. So welcome back, all of you. We now have Dr. Mike Pieck from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, who's going to talk to us about, I think, the most interesting program the NIH has going. So apologies to everybody else from the NIH. Mike, please go ahead.
Am I off mute? All right, can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
All right, great. So thanks, Gautam, and thanks to South Dakota, or the Dakotas, for inviting us all here. So you heard this morning about the big SBIR program across both the NCI and the NIH, and then Kathleen went into some of the unique services that NHLBI specifically has piloted, and some of the prior programs that have led into this new program called Catalyze, which launched during the pandemic in 2020. And we've been building the infrastructure out, and now we're almost at steady state through the program. And Kathleen went through this a little bit already, but we do have a focus, of course, on basic research at the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, but there's definitely a bigger focus on translational research and also workforce development that this program aligns with, in addition to OTAC. So as Kathleen went through a little bit, the NHLBI has been piloting early translational programs for quite some time. Here's a snapshot of all the different programs the NHLBI had in a time frame from 2016 to 2020. And one of the biggest challenges that we heard from investigators were that they had to at first get a grant, shown here in the gray boxes, and then kind of stitch together different resources to fill in the gaps between their basic research grant or their SBIR grant and those more additional like business services or just kind of targeted research activities that weren't covered under their normal grant mechanism. And under this time, of course, as Kathleen already went through, the NHLBI identified the need for these advisory services that now became OTAC, where there was this on-demand assistance for non-technical business-related resources. So throughout the mid-2000s, I guess, 2015 or so onward, the Institute started thinking about how to best leverage some of these, very targeted translational programs and make it more scalable across both, disease space, technology space, but more importantly, take it from like some of these regional proof of concept centers and make it expand to a kind of a national level. While all addressing these perennial challenges that we see across all of our innovators, regardless of whether it's cancer or heart, lung, and blood, there's always this gap between basic research funding and getting the funds to, get to the clinical trials, not only do the clinical trials. In addition, there's a clear need for information for very highly skilled scientific experts on how to take that scientific research discovery and turn it into a product that can then help patients in the long run and also be commercially viable so that it gets the investors needed to take it all the way. And then also this need for on-demand technology development experts. So if you're, scaling up and you're really good at developing a device, but it has an AI component, how do you get that expertise to come together and merge the hardware with the software, for example? And so out of that came this new program, or the framework for the Catalyze program. And just real briefly, the left side are kind of the high marks. So we have different funding streams and different requirements so that we maximize our investment in these projects. There's a coordinated approach, so there's several different entry points to the program that I'll get into in a second, based on how mature or emergent your technology is. So if it's just coming out of a basic research grant, we have some funding available for that. But if you already have some preliminary data, we have some funding for that. Or if you don't have a company yet, but you've gone to the FDA and they told you what you need for your IND, we plan to have funding for that, but we're not quite there yet. I'll get into a little bit about how we're thinking about supporting each individual project. So with a kind of the mantra being that we don't want them to fail for non-technical reasons, but if there's a technical challenge and it's just a dead end, we want to turn that funding off quickly and just say, we got to the end point and it's negative, right? So go back to the drawing board. And then as we encourage our investigators to be flexible, we also do 6-month annual assessments of how the program's working and kind of pivot as need be to improve the operations of the whole program. And another big push is on the right is this kind of network of experts. Kathleen mentioned that the NHLBI has piloted a mentoring network, and I think NCI has something similar where investigators have access to these really unique or targeted expertise to help overcome some sort of bottleneck they're having, either business related or technical related. We also have advisory services, not only from the Coordinating Center, but as Kathleen mentioned, the NHLBI's OTAC innovators as well. And then a focus on this cohort-based training through annual meetings and monthly seminars that are open to the public as well. So the program fits in the space similar to what Jonny mentioned with the SBIR and Kathleen mentioned, where we've identified this space as being the most difficult for investigators to transition through, from getting that basic concept to the FDA in preparation for your clinical trials. We do have early stage clinical trial funding announcements, and we also have, of course, R01s, but there's always this gap in between of these targeted product development type of studies. And the way we identified it is we kind of have 3 different avenues to get grant funding. On the left, the product definition. On the right, the preclinical piece, it's under development. That was a COVID-related kind of just threw our budgets all off. So we were told by our leadership to pause on that piece and just launch the grant funding piece, but hopefully we can get the preclinical piece up and running this year or next, let's see. But we have 3 different types of funding. Funding grants. So we have this broad bucket of enabling technologies where the focus is on technologies that are addressing a major bottleneck or barrier to broader either scientific discovery or kind of something that would really alleviate a challenge that the field is having. So for example, one of our investigators is developing a tissue chip for fibrosis, right? So IPF animal models are really difficult to develop. So this gives a kind of a high throughput screen potentially for new IPF therapeutics. We have others doing kind of a glycomics diagnostic assay, which is really emerging. So that those kind of technologies where there's not necessarily a targeted indication or disease focus yet, but once developed could really go down any one of many different ways, cancer or others. We want to fund those and support those. We also have targeted funding for therapeutics in the middle there, and then also device and diagnostics. And unlike the SBIR program, we are open to all US-based entities, academic nonprofits, for-profits, US-owned big companies and small companies. And we don't have any of the PI requirements that the SBIR and STTR programs do. So it's a little more flexible. We encourage you to outsource what's appropriate to CROs versus making you try to build it in-house and stuff like that. However, we do have several different unique special requirements, and a lot of these Kathleen spoke about are some of the best practices that came out of earlier programs, such as project management, the need for kind of matching funds, and then also kind of some additional focus on IP, which Gautam will talk about later, and also regulatory strategy. And the way our funding for the grant piece is set up is that we have a phased award similar to what Jonny mentioned as a fast track, where you have a phase 1, phase 2, if you're very early, or if you have some preliminary data, there's a 2-year kind of R33 or phase 2 or advancing award. On the right are the high marks of kind of the unique requirements that are expected at the time of application or at the time of transition to these R33, with a nominal matching fund and an accelerator partner, where the rationale is that we can help you from the NHLBI headquarters and through Zoom, but it's also important to have those kind of more local connections through an accelerator partner so that you can meet those follow-on investors, for example, or additional supporters or advocates for your technology and your team. Another piece that's somewhat unique is that we have an actual programmatic review. We're actually doing it at the beginning of June for that transition from R61 to R33. Normally, traditional grants, you send in a report, the program officer sits down and says, this looks pretty good, they've had their best effort, let's move on. With Catalyze, we're doing it a little more stringently, where we expect you to have milestones. We work with you for those milestones, and we want to push the teams to stick with those milestones and achieve those milestones prior to transitioning to the R33. And again, if there's some technical challenge or barrier that, since proposing the application and through the research of the R61 phase, they've hit a roadblock, perhaps of a technical roadblock, we'll tell them to finish the R61, figure out what the technical challenge is, and then come back and reapply for the R33 phase afterwards. I mentioned one of the key parts of this, and one of the reasons why we can push the teams toward milestones so much, is that we've partnered with RTI as a coordinating center. And so for this individual support that I was speaking about, each awardee is assigned a technical lead and a project manager from RTI, the coordinating center. Myself and other parts of my team of the Catalyze program are heavily involved, as well as an assigned program officer in one of the divisions based on what the technology or scientific part is. And then we also leveraged Kathleen's group with the OTAC services with each of the individual projects as well. So the Catalyze Coordinating Center was set up specifically to have some of this on-demand technical resources that we know that investigators need through the life cycle of their Catalyze award. So for therapeutics, it's listed here. A lot of the teams come in, they want to screen thousands of compounds and libraries, and then the medicinal chemist looks at it and says, these are not the right these aren't druggable. So they help work with them and kind of co-develop a better strategy sometimes to develop their therapeutics. They do have quite a bit of regulatory expertise. So we're helping one team who actually is accelerating through our program and didn't have a preclinical team or program together. So they were able to kind of surge and assist them so that they could meet their milestones, meeting with the FDA sooner than they thought. And then complementary to what OTAC provides with kind of entrepreneurs and residents, they do some of the same types of technology readiness, feasibility, and stuff that you might be able to achieve through an I-Corps program, but these are kind of more targeted kind of assessments that the innovation team does on behalf and with the investigators so that they learn. And how this looks for the investigator here is showing, our first year. So even prior to kickoff, we're involved in your project. So we take the summary statement that you receive from the peer review process here at the NIH, and we take your aims and we sit down with our technical experts and identify where your milestones are maybe too ambitious or where they're not clear enough, so that each aim has at least one milestone so we can track with you your progress toward achieving those aims and ultimately achieving success in the program. We also have an evaluation team who surveys each investigative team prior to them starting, to better understand their motivations and expertise or understanding of the product development process. We have some teams that have started several companies, and we have others who don't know what an SBIR is. So we have a full spectrum of different levels of understanding of what the process is going to take. In the first meeting, we sit down and develop a product development plan that's a living document, and it's, we work with the investigators and change as need be. And then we just, quarterly meetings, and then as investigators need these kind of more targeted support, we try to facilitate those conversations with either the RTI technical experts, or here at the NHLBI or the NIH experts as well. One of the things that Kathleen spoke about is this idea of pitch coaching and pitching. And so at our annual meeting, which was held back in September, we had all of our teams give a 60-second pitch to their peers, and then the peers voted the best ones. And then the next day they pitched to our NHLBI and NIH on-person residents and got kind of that Shark Tank experience and feedback. And we sent a few to some of the investor conferences afterwards. But all in all, this is a very hands-on type approach to this very targeted program for the NHLBI, of course. And just to show you a little bit more of how we do this. So this is a dashboard from our internal website tracking project risk across all of our programs. And I highlighted there just for everyone's reference. So, a lot of these projects, we are dealing with COVID just like everyone else, and being realistic that, delays happen, but we can now track these and help them either find another source for whatever animals they're doing, or a part perhaps that's, delayed and not coming in. And all in all, again, the goal is to try to help them have success and avoid those non-technical failures that we see often within the small business program and even beyond. Just a quick snapshot. I know you're mainly cancer focused, but I had the slide, so I just thought I'd show it. So we are definitely expanding the map compared to what our regional programs were. We have nice distribution across the divisions and technology types with obviously therapeutics, we're fairly heavy on therapeutics. But even if you're not focused in the heart, lung, and blood space, we have developed several resources that would be broadly available to anyone in the kind of early preclinical product development stage. So we actually have a webinar in an hour on preparing your IND, for example. So this is the website, NHLBICatalyze.org. So a monthly webinar series, it's recorded. So if you can't make it, you can always record it and see it afterwards. We've developed some resources and toolkits. This toolkit on project management was developed with the NCAI project managers, along with Kathleen, to kind of understand what are the basics for academic product development project management that we want to let everyone else know our best practices. And then, like everyone else, we have a newsletter. So if you want to sign up for that, we can have that conversation or just follow up with us. And I'll be the third person to mention that the NIH Reporter website is really helpful if you don't know where to start, but you already know where to start because you have us NIH folks now as part of your network. So we can help you navigate what is the best approach or fit for either funding or institute based on your technology or where you are in your development pipeline here. But again, the matchmaker function I use often, even when investigators email me, because I don't know all the program officers here at the Heart, Lung, and Blood space. So I cut and paste whatever they give me, and it winnows it down to at least 2 to 3 program directors that I can then reach out to. And obligatory for all NIH slides, we have resources and stuff at the end of our slide deck. So mine are here, and ways to contact us. And I think that's my last slide. So I'm happy to take some. I think I'm a little over, Gautam, I'm sorry. So maybe questions can wait until afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, I think we're okay. So if anybody wants to ask a question now, let's go for it. So Lee and Christian, if there are any questions, we have some time.
We're not seeing any questions in South Dakota, either of the North Dakotas. And anything online, Christian? I'm not seeing anything.
I'm not seeing anything online either.
I have one question from North Dakota. Hi, this is Mohi. Thank you very much to all of you for organizing and giving a very detailed picture of SBIR, STTR situation. My question to you is connected to the company at the very origin. So how the track record of the company plays a critical role in this entire process. That means if I just register myself with my idea as a company and have a product with a provisional patent, but the company is very young as like less than a year, is there any eligibility situation there to apply for the grant?
So, I'll just jump in and maybe I can hand it off to Kathleen and she can explain the commercialization assessment that NHLBI has kind of pioneered. But, it's the peer review is going to look at the scientific, these are still R&D projects, right? So for the most part, the peer review is going to double down on, do you have the right scientific expertise to achieve what you're proposing to do based on your biosketch and the team that you've assembled? And this is often more of a challenge to investigators versus, how early or mature their company is. So if you're going into the clinic and you're not, you don't have a physician on your team, for example, that's going to be identified as a weakness for your application versus someone who comes in with like a robust team or even just stating that once we get to the later when we're going to the clinic, we have planned to, onboard this expert, right? So that's more important than the maturity of your company. As I think Jonny mentioned, or Kathleen, we don't expect you to be full-time at a company that has no funding, right? So it's only at the time of award that we expect you to, if you're going to be at that company as a PI, be at the company.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, well, again, Dr. Pieck will be around at the end as well. So if you have any residual questions for him or any of us, the rest of us, we will be happy to take them then. So now it's going to be me and Ms. Lambeth. And the issue here is, again, there's a lot of terminology. I heard even more now from Dr. Pieck. R31, R33, R61. I actually don't know what these are. Accelerators, incubators, and then you notice that the catalyzed map is missing the DaCCoTAs. We don't get projects from there. So you're probably asking yourself, like, who can actually help me out in this thing? And fortunately for you, both the universities in North Dakota and South Dakota, you have actually a service that can demystify some of these things for you. And Beth here is the head of one of those offices. So Beth, why don't you talk about what it is that you do and why you exist?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? Dr. Prakash? Okay, perfect. Yeah. I am the technology transfer officer at the University of South Dakota, but just like Dr. Prakash mentioned, there are tech transfer officers at School of Mines and SDSU and in North Dakota. So I'm happy to represent all of us tech transfer officers. Now, when I was first putting together some of the ideas for this presentation, and Dr. Prakash and I were working together on what we wanted to present, I started out with kind of the usual tech transfer presentation that everyone gets and probably everyone's heard a few times. What is IP? What are the different forms of IP? What is a patent? Why is a patent interesting? Why is it an asset? What can it do for you in your commercialization strategy? And then when Dr. Prakash and I got together yesterday, we completely changed kind of our idea of what we wanted to discuss today. My goal for the presentation today is to get you excited about tech transfer and give you some knowledge on what the tech transfer office can do for you. And also just make you feel more comfortable in approaching the tech transfer office and when to approach tech transfer. So when tech transfer defined is, it's a process, as we've discussed quite a bit in the presentation already. You're taking new innovative ideas and you're commercializing them. You're turning them into novel products and services. And you're hoping to make some money. This could be license agreements, royalties, and the tech transfer office can help you go through that commercialization process. And because it is a process, we work step by step. I think when you think about taking something from a new discovery or idea all the way to commercialization, it can feel very overwhelming. Like, where do you even start with that? And one thing that I love about my job is I get to ask questions. I get to say, well, where are you now? What data do we have? Where is this concept? How much funding do you have? Or do you expect to have? Where can we get funding for this idea? Who is on your team? Who is not on your team that we might need to bring into the process? And what we're getting at is, what are our next steps? Where do we want to be 3 months from now or a year from now? And what is it going to take to get to that process? The Tech Transfer Office definitely talks a lot with companies, teams, students, is knowledgeable about different funding sources to infuse into this process to help with that baby step of just what are the next steps to get to that commercialization and how to build teams around that. So a question I have for you, Dr. Prakash, because when I speak to you about tech transfer and innovation, you are genuinely so excited about it. You have a lot of passion for it. I mean, it comes through even over Zoom. So I wanted to ask you, why are you excited about tech transfer, and why is NIH so invested in this process? And not just NIH, but I mean, the federal government is pouring millions of dollars into helping investigators and inventors and faculty members to commercialize their research. So in your opinion, why is there such an investment, and why are you so excited about this?
Yeah, thank you, Beth. So look, first I want to say that you need to, all of you in the audience need to use your tech transfer officers like Beth as your ally and not a burden to your process. And the reason why, so historically, I can understand people have looked at the technology transfer office as just, oh, these guys are going to file patent applications for me, and that's about it. But actually, it's been much more than that. And Beth and I had a conversation yesterday about how much the tech transfer office has evolved over the last, I don't know, 15 years maybe, to provide these ancillary services that we're going to talk about as well. The reason I'm genuinely interested in it is, you see, when we look at companies, especially startups, the only asset they actually have, in addition to their team, is their idea, and not just an idea that is going to go into some sort of product or service. That's the only asset you have. If you don't protect that asset, well, that's the end of the story, right? Nobody's going to invest in a company. I don't care how brilliant your idea is. Nobody's going to invest in a company that does not have some barrier to entry. And what could those barriers be? They could be patents, it could be trademarks, they could be some form of intellectual property. Additionally, the FDA provides another barrier. So you can't just obviously just sell drugs and devices to people, you know, out of the back of your car, right? So you've got some regulatory process there. And then there are other barriers that one could possibly think about. But a lot of these things do not occur until much later. But the one thing that does occur very early is intellectual property. So if you are not thinking about how to protect your intellectual property, not only will you not get investment in the company, and your idea will not make it all the way to the patient, which that's the only thing we care about, right? So we like to fund basic research, and that's great, but you all are here because you want to do some sort of translational work, meaning that you want to get your products and services into patients and actually see that they're adding value and improving healthcare, patient outcomes, you know, alleviating suffering, treating disease, all the things that we actually genuinely care about. So nobody's going to get involved in that if you don't have any intellectual property protecting it. So if you don't do that up front, you've already lost the battle, right? I mean, it's over. And so I would say to you that as much as you have good intentions to, and you're here because of your good intentions, you want to do good work, you want to move the products and services into being commercialized and into people and the population, you can't do it without a robust intellectual property strategy, and that starts early, and that starts with your technology transfer officer. So I hope that answers the question for you, Beth.
Yep, absolutely. And speaking of intellectual property, I think a lot of people think of it as patents. What is that patent strategy? But when you're thinking about intellectual property as a whole, in regards to that patent strategy, what the Tech Transfer Office can help you with is combining your patent strategy with how this should be commercialized. So for example, I was speaking with an inventor and one of our patent attorneys yesterday. And one of the questions we had is, okay, it looks like we can get a granted patent out of this, but if we do, is our claim getting too narrow to really be worthwhile for the commercialization strategy that we have in mind? And I know we're not talking a lot about patents and claims and everything, but what I wanted to really get across with that story is that the Tech Transfer Office will look at the market and the patent landscape to really put everything together for what are those steps of the commercialization strategy and what are the teams and resources and funding that's needed for that. So perfect, thank you so much. Also, one thing I should mention when talking about tech transfer, just overview, it starts with an idea. Truly, if once you have an idea or a concept, and Dr. Prakash and I will kind of go into this a little bit later, but that's when the tech transfer process can start, when you can start getting engaged with your office. And that's really the starting point, is just giving them a call and saying, hey, I had this idea, what's our next step? Maybe let's have a meeting today, or maybe, well, it'll be 3 months or so before you have something a little bit more substantial, and then we can meet at that time. I am going to share some slides here. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Is that the presenter view? Okay, perfect. I wanted to show this screen as well about bridging the gap. Every single presenter so far has discussed this gap, this valley of death, the differences in investment when you're trying to commercialize a technology. So while I'm not the first to explain this so far in our presentations today, I think it is very interesting to show the differences between levels of investment and how a technology can go from your basic principles being observed, your initial discovery, level 1, clear until level 9, where you have it fully commercialized and you have something that is a very valuable product or service on the market. As you can see, there is a gap between academia and industry, and that is the gap where the tech transfer officer lives, is to find who can fill that gap. What are the team members that can help you fill that gap to get your technology past lab validation? Are there students that we can infuse into this, or postdocs, or collaborators? What associations can you be talking to? What are your funding sources? So in my job, I talk to companies pretty frequently, and I infuse students into the process whenever and however possible. Every so often, my office can even pay for students. We have some work study students that will be doing some customer discovery on one project over the summer. We have students in a technology accelerator program that we pay to help sort of bridge this gap to get these technologies developed from, like I said, your initial discovery in the lab to hopefully help get it even further along the commercialization pathway. So my question for you, Dr. Prakash, is how do you see this gap playing out in your job when you are talking to investigators and these inventors for the first time? Where are they at in this process? And what are some of the most common questions you get, or kind of misconceptions you get about this difference between academia and industry when it comes to levels of investment and developing a tech?
Yeah, so actually what I see is that academics, not surprisingly, seem to think that the idea is the be all and end all, right? And it's not. It is it's the commercialization of that idea that actually is of consequence. So the biggest thing that I find is that you have a lot of academics who think, well, I came up with that. Well, that's great, but it had to go into a product with a whole bunch of other features that you had never even thought about and you would never have considered. And that's okay. It's perfectly fine. Nobody's expecting you to leave your day job teaching students and all the other things that you do, conducting basic research, which adds to the storehouse of knowledge that we have, which is great, and think about all these other things. Some people are like that, but most of you are not. So, and that's quite all right. whereas industry is looking at these products or ideas and saying, well, I don't know how to make a product out of that, right? And they are concerned about products and sales and market share and all these various things. So the goal here really is that we need somebody, and your tech transfer officer is probably that person, to see how your idea that you have is in a position such that it would be attractable to industry and commercializable in some fashion. Now, if you are good and that's what you want to do, you might well form your own company, as Lee has, for the name or not, but certainly for the technology, and go off and commercialize it. Again, that would mean leaving your day job and going off and being the next Elon Musk. If that works for you, that's perfectly fine. But I presume that most of us are not like that. I'm certainly not. And so I find that the biggest gap is just the expectations of what the idea does versus what the actual product is a chasm that I'm astonished that there's still that sort of gap there that needs to be filled.
And you bring up a really good point, Dr. Prakash. When I first started with tech transfer, I was bombarding our faculty inventors with so much information about SBIR-STTR, and I just wanted all of our inventors to start their own business and apply for SBIR-STTR. And some of them are very, very interested in that. Whereas others, they want to be very heavily integrated into the process, but they themselves are not going to, call up the IRS, get an EIN number, get a banking account. So they want that CEO of their business, you could say, that has that technical expertise, that can understand the technology and can help it go through that commercialization pathway, that can help to define what that medical need is. What is this unmet medical need? And they themselves want to be very involved. They're excited about this technology. And that is another area where the tech transfer office can come in. It's all about making those connections and those collaborations. And the tech transfer office can say, hey, you want to be this technical scientific lead. Let's see if we can find you a CEO. Now, I'm not promising that I can find a CEO for you, but at least that's a conversation of where we can put that team together and have a better understanding of the resources that you need to accomplish your goals. When a lot of people talk about tech transfer, and I have a slide about this kind of later on, but they tend to talk about tech transfer really, really broadly. So you'll hear words like, let's increase economic development initiatives. What is tech-based entrepreneurship? Let's get a lot of patents and licenses and new startups and new product launches. And when people talk about tech transfer and the impact that tech transfer can have, they do tend to speak about it, kind of in my experience, in kind of what are the nationwide impacts. And I think that is very exciting and inspirational. But Dr. Prakash and I wanted to talk to faculty members. What do we think the value of tech transfer is to you right now? Not necessarily on this nationwide, like, economic development initiative scale. The first thing that I think of, and maybe it's the first thing that some of you think of, is promotion and tenure. Let's just be totally honest. When you are a faculty member, you are incredibly busy. Most faculty members that I speak with are working after hours. They're here on the weekends. They're in the lab all the time. So when you decide to put your time and effort towards something, it really needs to be worth it for you, for your promotion and tenure. That's a big part of the equation. And just in full transparency and like brutal honesty, I've had not one, but two different faculty members over the course of my time as tech transfer officer come to me and say, hey, I'm excited about tech transfer. I have ideas that I think can be commercialized and can really be worth something, but I just got promotion and tenure yesterday. So I feel like I couldn't really talk to you until I received that. And I honestly can understand that. It is a lot of work to go through tech commercialization. I've even attended, I think it was another university that was giving a presentation on tech transfer. And one of the, I think it was maybe a guest, said that they didn't even consider the tech transfer process until after promotion and tenure was received. And I don't know if this is the most popular thing to mention, but I think it is really important to just call that out because it's on people's mind when they think about what should I spend my time on, what's valuable to me. So here's how the tech transfer process can be valuable to you in your promotion and tenure. And I'm just speaking from the South Dakota Board of Regents promotion and tenure guidelines, although I think it's probably very similar in some of the other states. You are evaluated based upon research, service, and teaching efforts. But all of that combines into what is your scholarly activities and how are you creative. And that's where the tech transfer process can come in. We can say, here are the impacts of this person's work with our office. We can provide letters of representative documentation for your dossier that says, hey, tenure review committee, this person has worked with our patent attorney and our tech transfer officer on a patent strategy. This person has a patent pending and this is what this means. This is the impact. This person has worked with our students in this Acceleration Center program or other work study students on customer discovery. Because of this, they've been able to apply for XYZ funding sources that are normally would not have been available to them if they hadn't conducted these. They've done customer discovery at conferences. I mean, we can really list out, this is very important, and this is how it aligns with the university's mission. So tech transfer activities absolutely can help to bolster your case for aligning with the mission of the university and your value to the university. Another important thing is recognition as well. The people, a lot of our inventors can be recognized with either awards and prizes. I know at the University of South Dakota, we have President's Research Awards every year. And I think another big part of recognition as well, beyond awards at the university level or recognition at the university level, is recognition if you have a company that's successful. I mean, that's a lot of recognition as well. And tech transfer brings a lot of new avenues for research impact. Your traditional academic research impact, you are applying for grants, you have a ton of classes that you're teaching and people in your lab that you're mentoring, and you're working on your research publications, and that is important research impact. But when you think about the tech transfer impact and commercialization, and you're talking about these unmet medical needs and improving patient health outcomes in this different way through commercialization, that's another way to think about research impact. Of course, you're introducing students to new career pathways. You do have additional avenues for sponsorship and funding. So for example, the NIH I think there's like Start a Startup challenges and prizes. Throughout this whole presentation, there's been a huge focus on different avenues of funding for one-on-one mentorship and help to get through this commercialization pathway. From the South Dakota Board of Regents IP policy, there's a 50-50% of net income that's allocated to inventors. So if our office is able to license something, any of the royalties coming in, we will pay ourselves back first for patent reimbursement, but then after that, we'll keep half and the inventors will keep half. And I will be honest with you, one of my goals, I would love it if I had a lot of faculty members just driving to work in a Bugatti. I would get so many invention disclosures and we would have so many ideas. I don't know how many of them can really be commercialized all the time, but that would be a total goal of mine. That would be very exciting. And then customer discovery and tech assessment. What our office can provide to you is helping to define what that problem is, what is the unmet need, and how is your technology a solution. We're doing that through, like I said, prior art, patent searches, market assessments, and really bringing students into the fold. I have 3 or 4 ongoing customer discovery groups this summer that we're mentoring through that process. And our goal by the end of the summer, these students will be presenting to the faculty members what their findings are in the unmet need in this area through their customer discovery activities. So my question for you, Dr. Prakash, when you are working with inventors, what is the most common reason why inventors start getting excited about the process? And what do you feel is the main value that inventors are looking for, your academic inventor?
And I think that the value and the excitement come from just actually seeing their products being used, their ideas being used, I'm sorry, in some product or service. As I said, most of us come into this field because we genuinely want to make a difference in something. And I don't think there's anything greater than saying, I had this idea, I got it protected, it was, as a result, it became valuable to somebody. If it wasn't me, a company licensed it and took it over, and now it's there. It's a drug, it's a heart valve, it's a stent, it's something. And there's a genuine sense of pride. Inventors invent things certainly to make money. Nobody has any objection to that, but also I think to see that they are solving some need in the marketplace. So there's a pain point there that they know about, because let's face it, you're all the experts in whatever field you're in. I'm not, but you are. And so you'll come across these problems all the time, and you think like, wow, I could fix that because that is really irritating me or people like me. And so it's there when you can actually add some value and see that you've done something. And I think that for all the ones that I've worked with, they're the one, that's what they feel most happy about. Actually, it's not that they made a lot of money, it's that they've actually solved a problem in the marketplace that they noticed and did something about. And I think that's a really great thing to feel.
And Dr. Prakash, when you're meeting with faculty and inventors for the first time, how do you help them determine what are their personal goals versus maybe the commercialization pathway? And I know obviously your focus is on that IP strategy. How do you merge all that together with what are they valuing, what is their passion, and then kind of that strategy piece and making sure it all aligns?
Yeah, so the passion is there, so there's no doubt about that. And then there are practicalities. And so my goal always is to ask them, how do you see this product? Where do you see this in a product or service? So if you were to think about something that's in a package, let's say, what would that package look like, right? And so once you start there, you can say, oh, okay, well, I can see this being an injectable drug, okay? So, we have to formulate it correctly, and then we're going to inject it into somebody, and it's going to solve this problem, fix this disease or solve this condition. Okay, from there, that's great. So that's clearly the end point. You can now use that as a way to think about all the other things that you need to do. Okay, if it needs to be injectable, then what kind of studies do we need to do for the FDA? And if it's an injectable, make sure you're back to patents now. Make sure your patent claims cover the injectable formulation, right? So you go from, I always started with the commercial embodiment, or what one would reasonably imagine the commercial embodiment to be. Remember, when I get involved, and when Beth gets involved, it's very, very early, right? So these are ideas, concepts that have just started out. So it's what you do is you try and quickly get to the end as best as you can, because we have a lot of incomplete information. And then you work with that and say, okay, now that you see what you can imagine commercial embodiments would look like, how do we go about getting there? And along the way, as Mike pointed out and others, there's a lot of pivoting, iterating, going back. We all know that scientific progress is not a straight line. And so you'll go back and forth and here and there, and some things will drop off and some things will be added. But if you can see where you want to go, it'll satisfy both your passion to move this forward, as well as the practicalities of the process. So that's the way I would do it.
Perfect, thank you. We also wanted to go over common questions and misconceptions about the tech transfer process. One thing I really love about tech transfer, I love it, and it's also frustrating at the same time. there are so many different opinions on how it can and should work. What is the process? What is time consuming? What is or should be really easy? What is going to be difficult? If you could listen to 10 different presentations on the tech transfer process, and you will get something different out of each one. So there's very different flavors on how to take this. And Dr. Prakash, I know by now you've been in probably a zillion IP strategy presentations. There's probably something a little bit different about each one of those too. I mean, there's a lot of different opinions and takeaways that exist in the realm of IP strategy as well.
Yes, that's correct. And so, and nobody expects you all to figure it out right away. And there's no such thing as a correct, like 100% correct way of going about doing things, because you'll never know until the very end. What you want to do where we get involved or where you get involved is to have a situation where you can keep your various options open. So, here you're saying the first question is when you disclose an idea to the best of the world, right? So you want to talk to her early, and this is true. That's why we heard the common theme of this is get involved early. When you have an idea that you think can be some sort of commercializable product or service, that's when you go and talk to her and say, this is the idea that I have, before you publish it. And I'm sorry, I'll go to the third point now. Does it prevent you from publishing or presenting? The answer is no, as long as you've spoken to her first or her equivalent. So then the question is, how do you devise various options to protect that? So IP strategy means you think about the ways to protect your idea and do that stuff early. So, for example, I'll give you a really silly example, but one that I've seen far too often that is distressing. I will find a company that, for example, is working on a disease or a condition that's more prevalent outside the United States than inside the United States. I think malaria is a good example, right? But will not have any intellectual property protection options, not patents, options for non-US markets. Now, you think to yourself, oh, that seems pretty silly. Yeah, it is, but those decisions were made early on, and a lot of them are irreversible. Back to my point about losing the battle. So it's important to think about keeping your options open, and that's true for companies as well. So if you're looking for somebody to acquire you, and we had an example Jonny showed of Merck acquiring OncoImmune. I can't remember the name of the company now, but Merck is a multi-billion-dollar, multi-country, international, global company. They're not interested in just the US market, right? The US market is big, but the rest of the world is catching up pretty quickly. So if you don't have the option of getting international rights, you've limited yourself to what you've got for the US market only. And big companies are just not interested in that. So no strategy is the same. I agree with you, Beth. It's very complicated. You don't know if you're right or wrong until the very end. And most of the time you end up being wrong, but you want to do enough to keep your options open.
Absolutely. In fact, when it comes to thinking about tech transfer and how I can provide value, sometimes I feel like I would maybe provide more valuable if I could send someone a checklist and say, this is exactly what we'll do. This is exactly what the process will look like for your tech. And this is exactly what the outputs are that I can provide to you. I don't have a checklist. But there's a lot of value the tech transfer process can bring to you, but it's just so different for every technology, depending on where it needs to go and where it has already gone and what's already been done. So when I was talking with Dr. Prakash yesterday, I said, when it comes to disclosing an idea, I just want people to talk to me really, really early on at the concept stage. And Dr. Prakash, you're like, oh, really? Wow. That's a lot of conversations. That's really, really early on in the process. As a smaller institution, University of South Dakota, I do like engaging people at that very first step of their idea. And maybe it's really not ready for an invention disclosure. There's really not a lot of data that's in hand to say, hey, this is what this could be. This is maybe what the commercial product could look like. But the first step, I really like hearing about that first concept. And sometimes after our initial meeting, I'll say, okay, well, it sounds like it might be, according to your R&D timelines, at least another year before we'll meet again and maybe have something ready for an invention disclosure. But I really like having those early conversations, even if it's not ready for the whole IP committee invention disclosure prior art process necessarily. And another question I get all the time is, who is an inventor? And Dr. Prakash, I'm wondering if you can give us your opinion on not only that, who is an inventor, because I have a lot of back and forth with faculty on that one. If this person is in the lab and he or she did XYZ according to my direction, but then improved it a little bit by this, how are they an inventor? So if you could discuss that, and also your opinions on the Bayh-Dole Act, because I tell people not to really worry about it, but it is something that I get a lot of questions about.
Yep. So inventorship can get complicated, but from your own perspective, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Conceptually, the answer is relatively straightforward. An inventor is anybody who's added something to at least one claim of a patent application. Okay, so it could be as simple as, you have some mechanical device and an undergraduate says, why don't you put a screw at this particular point? Because if you do put a screw there, it'll perform this functionality. And that ends up in one of the claims. That person's an inventor, right? But I'll tell you my own personal experience. When I was an undergraduate at the University of Rochester, before I got my PhD at the University of Maryland, I worked in a lab where I was told by the PI to run certain experiments and do certain things, and it was great. We got a couple of publications out of it. So I was happy, but I wasn't an inventor because he told me which experiments to run. He did the analysis. We talked about it, but what my contribution did not end up in any one of those patent claims, and that was the end of that. So authorship and inventorship are not the same. An undergraduate can certainly be an inventor as well as an author, and that's fine if they have added something conceptually to at least one patent claim. And that's not for you to worry about. That's for Beth to worry about, right? Or the patent attorneys, because they will ask those sorts of questions. Where did the concept of these claims come from? And who was responsible for that? So your biggest concern is to make sure that you disclose to the Beths of the world plus the patent attorneys what it is that each of these people have contributed, and let them go through the legal process to decide that. Don't worry about that. But also you shouldn't worry about, in this case, I presume, Beth, you're talking about the government marching rights for the Bayh-Dole Act. That should be, of all the concerns you have, that should not even be on the list. So the government, and I can say this with authority, has never marched into anybody's rights. Now, we have a paid up license, okay? The Bayh-Dole Act, in addition to giving you rights to the IP, gives the government a paid up license, fully paid up, because we funded you. So it'd be unconscionable to the US taxpayer if we did not get a fully paid up license to that technology. But it does not mean, while there is theoretically a possibility, the government is not interested in going in and snatching people's intellectual property rights. We don't have the ability or the interest. There may be, you can hear talk about this in Congress and so on, but listen, that should not be one of your concerns. You should be concerned about how to get your rights protected and commercialize your technology. The government is not going to come and snatch it away. What are we going to do with it? Manufacture drugs ourselves? We don't do stuff like that. We are more concerned about helping you get there. So, as I said, of all the concerns you have, that should not even be on the list. So I would say, put that away. People will talk and they'll say, oh, are you concerned about? No, you shouldn't be. So please don't.
I completely agree. Thank you very much for your take on that. And just maybe one last thing about publishing and presenting. I appreciate your opinion on contacting your tech transfer officer. Absolutely does not hinder you in any way from publishing or presenting your work. I understand how important that is for you. I've had faculty members tell me a little bit about an idea, and I'll say, this is absolutely fascinating. I mean, let's talk again. I want to know more about this. And they'll say, well, I'm just really not ready because I have to be able to publish this. I mean, this is an important publication for me and my postdoc. And I'll say, this will not prevent you from publishing at all. Let's just talk about timelines. When do you think it will be published? And then, you know, we'll kind of work backwards from that, depending on what you think this is. And if we have something at this point that can be protected, when to file a provisional. So the answer, absolutely, it will not prevent you from publishing. Dr. Prakash, are there any common questions or misconceptions about the tech transfer process that we didn't cover that you can think of?
Let's see. I'm looking at the list here that we talked about earlier. So interfering in the research flow, we talked about that. It shouldn't. Just, you know, talked earlier, the discussions can be as superficial or as detailed as need be. So another issue I think a lot of people have is, you know, I don't have enough data to come and talk to the tech transfer officer. Again, it's not the conversation. She or he will tell you that maybe you need more, and Beth has always said that, you know, maybe come back in 6 months when we have fleshed out the idea a little bit more. Remember, you cannot patent an idea, right? So let's put that out right out there. You cannot patent an idea. What you're patenting is that idea in some form that's actually going to be a product or service in some fashion, right? So let's see. NIH rights to inventions we talked about. Software. Okay, so software is a tough one. And also with that is what is and isn't patentable. Listen, the landscape is changing every day. I wish I could tell you what to do. I can't. And if I told you, it'd be wrong tomorrow. So this is where you need actual professional help with patent attorneys. And even then, they don't get it right because, you know, the courts intervene all the time. But if you have a software idea, and there's a lot of mHealth and software apps going on, regulated by the FDA more and more now. So you do need to bring those to the attention of your tech transfer officer, because those could be protected in some fashion in a way that you are able to then attract outside investment. And that's the goal, right? I mean, you are not, unless you're very, very good and interested, you're not going to be raising funds yourself. So the goal is to be able to attract outside investment. And the last thing is, you know, I know a lot of you are saying, listen, you know, my university doesn't file a lot of patent applications. It seems like a waste of time. The process is convoluted. I go there, they ask me all these questions, and then they tell me go away, right? So I get it. It's frustrating, but it's one of those things where it's like doing your taxes. At some point, it will pay off for you. At least the IRS won't come after you. But you do need to be able to build that into your process, at least the conversation. And the questions that the review committee is asking you is not because they want to be difficult. It's because, you know, the university and almost any other entity has limited resources, and they need to figure out whether it's all competing ideas towards commercialization. And so it's a question of whether this or that is a better use of their funds, again, with incomplete information. So just like Jonny said, reapplications and rework actually does help you be more successful the second time around. Also, I will tell you that in respect to SBIR applications, and I wanted to mention this because I don't know where else to put it except here, is that, you know, a lot of people do commercialization applications just like they do their basic R01 applications, and they're not the same. The commercialization piece, and IP is an important part of the commercialization piece, has to be thought through and written carefully, and not just, oh, I'll just add some, you know, as an afterthought. So please, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why SBIR applications, the rate is so low, is because academics just take their research idea and then they send it off to Nature or Science or wherever, and then they send it into as an SBIR application, and guess what? It fails because nobody knows what the product or service is. Your tech transfer officer can help you think through that. So those are the ones I wrote down, Beth. I don't know if there are any others that you'd like to talk about.
I know we're kind of running up against time, but something you said really reminded me. So our process, like I said, with really any tech transfer office, it just starts with learning about your idea, and then there will be a disclosure, an invention disclosure of some sort. And then usually, but not at all institutions, there's a committee of some sort that will also review it. And I feel like a common misconception when I'm working with faculty inventors on what to present to our committee. Our inventors are thinking, let me give you all the data and tell you all of the aspects of this and how cool it is. But my IP committee, they will raise their hands and ask the same question in 5 different ways, which is, will this provide a return on investment of some sort to the university? And I don't necessarily mean financially, but how will this help the university's mission and vision and our impact? And so there is that kind of like Dr. Prakash, you were saying, the RO1 versus the commercialization focused product development SBIR. Same thing with a review committee or a tech transfer office of why we're looking at the market and why the committee keeps asking, what is the benefit to the university for this? We did have one other slide, but I know that we are kind of coming up against time. Even though we are coming up against time, Dr. Prakash, if you could give us just a quick example of, well, I guess I should ask Christian or Dr. Baugh, can we have like 5 more minutes? Okay, 5 more minutes. Dr. Prakash, if you could give us an example of a team that you've worked with that, in your opinion, ended up being successful. One thing when I think about helping people get excited about tech transfer, other than talking about maybe a future Bugatti, is just what is that success story? And if you could share with us just really quickly, what is a success story that was inspirational and memorable for you?
Yeah, so we've seen a few already, right? So Dr. Franca-Koh talked about one, Dr. Rousche talked about another. And so when these companies are winning awards and getting $425 million from Merck, that's fantastic. So $500 million.
That's Bugatti level.
Yeah, that's right. So listen, if you're all going to be that successful, that's great. But really, what I see is something far more mundane, for lack of a better word, but certainly impactful. So there's a software invention now. So talking about one where you think to yourself, oh, that's going to blow up. But it was some sort of app. And I'm not going to go into the details because I haven't gotten permission from the person itself as to whether I can do this. But it was an app that helped in some sort of mental health thing. And so when we got involved with this investigator, she was very raw, right? She obviously was very smart. There's no doubt about that. But the presentation was like a research presentation. There was no graphics. There was just a lot of text. And we went multiple rounds with her. And Dr. Rousche talked about coaching the pitch. So for a conference that we helped put on, and at the end of that, and we thought of all the people that are going to do well, we did not think she was the one. Not because we didn't think the idea was good, it was because she would have been picked if the idea was not good. It was more that she was very uncomfortable and unable to express it. But we got there, and at the end of the conference, she was the only one who actually received a funding from an outside source, which is fantastic. This is great. That's one example. In the recent American College of Cardiology, we had people winning, this thing for a heart device that was mentioned in the press. This is something out of Houston, so the local paper picked it up, and I'm sure that person's going to get follow-on funding because it was a pretty cool device, but it had to be presented and packaged in a way that made sense. And I think that company had been going on for a little while, and only now had it actually gotten some traction because of the work that we all put into it. So some of these stories could be, $100,000, $300,000, but so you're not going to go out and buy a very expensive car and live in a big house, but you will actually see that the product or service is going to make a difference. And I think that those are the stories. There are a lot more of those than the Bugatti stories, for sure.
If I may ask, on the success stories, the teams that you're thinking about, is it a team of one? We're just talking about one faculty member, or do these successful teams tend to have a lot of interdisciplinary public-private partnerships? There's more than one person with the idea generation and moving things forward.
So I've seen a combination of both, actually. So it's never one. it's almost always a team, and but the team can be small. And I'll tell you this. So the team actually is maybe the most important thing, actually, more than I mean, the science, as Jonny said, the science has to work. Yeah. So we'll put that aside, and if it doesn't work, then that's the end of it. But there is an old adage that it sounds pithy and a little silly, but people invest in people. So if you have got a team that has the functionality that people expect you to have, and is able to articulate the idea with the passion and with the and to explain where it fits into whatever need that is, what the market looks like, what the FDA strategy is, what the intellectual property strategy is, and to look at the team and say, yes, this is the team to move it forward. Now, what does that mean? Forward to launch a product? Possibly not, but forward enough to say of interest to a commercial partner? Yes, at least that far. And that's what you definitely need. So that could be 3 people if you're in the software space, and maybe you don't need a lot of like hardware design. But if you're in, if you're talking about a device, you should have somebody who is in the design aspect of it, right? I mean, that should be on your team. So yeah, it's usually a team, but the expertise that you need covered.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I know we went quite a bit over time, but I think with that, thank you very much, Dr. Prakash. I thought this was really the information I wanted to get out to people about what is tech transfer, why it can be really exciting, and just how to start that process. With that, I think I'll turn things over to Christian, and then we'll have a Q&A.
Yes, that concludes all of the formal presentations that we have scheduled for today. The final session of today is a Q&A featuring all of our NIH presenters, along with Dr. Baugh and Beth Lambeth. So if you have any questions for our guests, feel free to reach out wherever you are, if you're in South Dakota or North Dakota, or online via chat to either myself or Dr. Baugh, and we'll find the answer for you. So no time like the present.
Hey, Christian, I just have a comment, a follow-up on what Gautam was just saying. And he was talking about the importance of team, and it's so important to surround yourself with good people and different expertise. And I think maybe what we haven't said is, and one of our colleagues has said it for 10 years now, the person has to be coachable. So please be open-minded and flexible. We don't know, as scientific innovators, what we don't know. And sometimes just listen to, you're very protective sometimes of what you're developing, and we really are here to help. So I would just recommend, listening and being receptive to new ideas, whether you take them or not, that's up to you. But coachability, our angel investor, he has said that from the beginning, and we have found it to be so true over the years.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, I worked with a lot of academics who, I don't know whether to fund or to slap, frankly. And frankly, I wish I could do the latter, but I can't. So but they're not going to get investment on, because companies really want to deal with people that they can work with, and I absolutely agree with Kathleen on that. So this is the opportunity. You're not going to get all of us in a room like this or available. So any questions all the way from Jonny to Beth and myself, please ask now.
I actually have one question, Dr. Prakash. This is Mohi again, sorry. Actually, I know that it differs from university to university, but just to open a company, is there any particular division of a given university that might help the individuals or the PIs who wants to open a company? And my second question is more directed to Christian, Beth, or Professor Baugh, that if PDC of DaCCoTA consortium can help an individual to open a company or to move forward with this SBIR grant.
Beth, I think that the answer to both questions comes from you, I would say.
In that case, I'll take the microphone back if you can hear me okay. I would say absolutely reach out to the tech transfer office when it comes to that process of starting a company. We actually do have checklists for that. We have a checklist for what are the items that you will need. What is that process of registering a business with the state? What is the registering the business with the IRS and then getting a bank account all set up? We have those processes, and then you can have those really fun conversations about sales and use tax and QuickBooks and accounting and Schedule K1s and but we can absolutely help start that process or introduce you to consultants that can also help faculty members go through that process as well. And then there's a question.
And I can certainly speak on behalf of the PDC for the Dakota. So yes, we can definitely help with that process. So we're not going to be as knowledgeable in terms of all of the things that Beth was just talking about. You certainly don't want to come to me if you have questions about QuickBooks. I have enough problems managing my own grants, so I'm not going to be able to help with a company. But what I can certainly do is put you in touch with the individuals that can help across the institutions. So the Professional Development Corps, with it being an inter-institution entity, we can reach out to the people at your specific location and put you in touch with those people and give you some ideas on how to start that conversation. So the types of questions that you need to ask, the things that you want to get out of that meeting, so you are able to have a productive time. Because as you can probably guess from all of the things that we've been talking about, this is a really in-depth process. It's going to be different depending on what state you're in and what university you're working from. So we don't want to waste your time and have you just show up at the tech transfer office and say, hey, I want to start a company. They are certainly there to help, but it'll certainly make the process go along a whole lot quicker if you are going into it with, hey, I want to start a company and these are the questions that I have. How do I do this? How do I do this? Who should I talk to about that? So the Professional Development Corps can certainly help with that. We are having tech development as one of our points that we're helping investigators with, and we'll continue to build those resources out. But currently, we can certainly put you in touch with those people that can help for your specific institution and your specific state. In addition to that, there was one other thing that I was going to say, and now it has escaped me. So I'll just say, yes, we can definitely help. And Christian is a great first person to reach out to, and we can help that process along.
Thank you.
And remember, for an SBIR, the recipient of the SBIR is a small company. So you need to have that formed before you apply to one of those things. So that it's a critical step. Early.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Khosrow.
Okay. I am a cancer biologist in University of South Dakota, and we are developing with another colleague in chemistry department and nanotechnology for drug delivery for colorectal cancer. And we tried one time SCTR, but it wasn't successful. We continue working on this project, and recently I connected to NCI, the nanotechnology, NCL, I'm sorry, Nanotechnology Characterization Laboratory. I just wondering that connection, I basically already started to talk with two researchers in NCL, and they offer me some of the inputs about the immunogenicity of our nanoparticle, and also checking this nanoparticle in larger vertebrate, I mean rat. I was wondering that because we want to try again the SCTR, connecting to the NCL, is it something that is advantageous, or any comments on that? I really appreciate.
That's for me, right? Nice to meet you. Yeah, so the NCL, I did not have time to touch on other resources that NCI offers. The NCL Nanocharacterization Lab is a great one for people in your area. And they definitely, will provide you with both good advice and kind of in-kind support to help you advance your technology. It is worthwhile, I think, to maybe get a letter from them. I mean, I guess the details matter a little bit, and perhaps it'd be easiest if we schedule like a call later to discuss the details of your project, but potentially a letter of support from the NCL could be add value to your application. And I would say, well, I mean, it definitely is a plus, net plus.
Okay, they basically offer conducting some of the experiments to complete what we are doing. So I was wondering that if I put that one in the grant, for example, for the immunogenicity, I don't have expertise to do that. So I thought that either I should ask a colleague, finding the colleague is difficult, then NCL basically offered that one. But this would be a part of the service charge. They said that they cannot do the free for us unless that I have an RO1.
So I can't remember if Nanocharacterization Lab is like a NIH contractor or part of the intramural. So there are rules about and SBIR money cannot flow back to an intramural NIH program. So but it is allowed for companies to partner with what are called FFRDCs, I think. I can't remember, but they're basically like a contractor to the NIH. And I think Nanocharacterization Lab is one of those, but I'm blanking on for sure. So if it is a contractor to NIH, then it's possible that you could include them as a fee for service or subcontract on the grant. If it's part of like the NIH intramural, then you would not. So that's a great question, and I can find out for you. So let's set up a time to talk.
Absolutely. I will contact you and email you, and then I can go to the detail. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, Kazuhiro. So in terms of how the grant will review, it sounds like this is definitely filling an identified weakness from the previous application. So however you go about getting that expertise and getting that data is going to obviously be very beneficial. So I would certainly encourage you to reach out and to get that set up, whether it be a collaborator that's not charging fees, whether it be another institution that'll charge you fees, or whether it's through NIH itself, through fee service or non-fee service. It sounds like having that data and that expertise is what's really going to bolster that grant success. So definitely sounds like something to do.
Yes, thanks.
And we do have a question here in South Dakota, so I'll hand over the mic.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys have just really appreciate all the information, but just, you talked about being coachable, get in touch with the transfer officer early in that, but maybe, yeah, just any other things that you've seen where what people do that they fail or what they do that makes the process harder on themselves than they need to. Any other tips like that that maybe come to mind? I know you've mentioned some of these already, but your one or two big tips to really take home to say, if you do this, it makes the process that much better.
So I'll speak from a telling you a story perspective. Who was that? I would like to address that person by name, if possible.
Yep. So that was Corey. He is a faculty member in our PT department. Okay.
So Corey, I mean, this is great. The thing that's important is when you go in front of an audience, and it could be the NIH for that matter, if you're writing a grant application. The biggest thing that I find when I read small business application grants, or if I listen to pitches for conferences, is I don't know what the story is. You have to have a story. Why are you going from where you are to where you want to be? What I end up getting is, here's a bunch of stuff that I know. And it, like, where does it all fit together, right? It's just like the person just threw paint at the wall. That we don't have time to decipher which pieces matter and which pieces don't matter. So you've got to make that story. Listen, I solved this problem. I want to fix it. This is the way I'm planning to fix it. This is the reason why it matters. If you can't tell that story versus, well, you did some experiments and this and that, you're like, I don't have time for that. Nobody's got time for that, actually. Investors don't have time for that. A committee that is sitting for your SBIR application, I've seen plenty where I'm like, what is the product? Even presentations, I'll go through a 5-minute presentation with somebody and I've reached the end of the 5 minutes and I still don't know what they're selling. At that point, you've already failed. So Corey, that's what I would do is you think about your story, think about why you are there, why you want me to be interested in that. And then that will help you, actually will help you entirely. So I'll stop there.
Maybe just to add to that, when it comes to thinking about NIH funding, obviously we're all here to promote our services, but speaking to us and then us handing you off to the appropriate scientific expert at the NIH greatly increases your chances. It makes your grant application better because you have our feedback, and we can help you avoid the mistakes that are common too, right? So.
And I wanted to add to that because that's the first thing that came to my mind as well is what is the problem that this is solving? And we'll have a lot of conversations, and I'm guilty of this. I'll spend an hour just getting super, super excited about a tech because it's novel, it's different. Look at all these aspects of what it can do, but you still have to really find out what is the problem that it solves. And that's why I harp on customer discovery so much, is you really do want to get out and talk to as many people as you can. That's why I use the summer to have so many students working on customer discovery projects, because I have some technology. I have no doubt that it's novel. Well, as much as you can, I guess, say that you have no doubt that it's novel and it's still a patent pending, but I think it's novel. I think we can get something patented out of it. It's different, but what problem does this solve? And we're really unlikely to move through the patenting process unless we can first answer that question, because that's really the first answer on that commercialization pathway to build out the timelines and the funding needs, is to find out what that is. And as you talk to people, your idea of what problems are solving, what are these unmet medical needs, it's just going to change all the time, but at least it gives you a starting point for creating that commercialization pathway.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. I mean, the who cares and why does it matter is if you don't know what that is and you can't justify it and explain it, then that's going to be an issue. But a lot of the links we have information in there about how to think about what to do, what not to do. So check out those. And then one other additional piece of information I want to say is read the review criteria that your reviewers are going to be judging you on, right? There are specific questions in there. And you want to make sure when you write your grant application that you address that all. Think of yourself as the reviewer, and you need to write that so that that person who may have a lot of experience, a little bit of experience, can easily understand exactly what you're trying to do. It sounds simple, but applicants don't read, and sometimes they don't even address every piece of the application that we're asking for. Sometimes we ask for just sort of a strategy and some of the catalyzed programs. What's your IP strategy and what's your regulatory strategy, whatever. And it doesn't need to be baked fully, but we ask for that piece of information, and you can't imagine how many people don't even include that in their applications. And so make sure you read everything, read what you're being judged on, how you're being judged by your reviewers, and contact us early and think about it early and plug into the right timelines, because it does take 6 to 9 months for the small business grants if you're interested in applying and being funded.
I can add one more thing as well. So something that I found really useful when, first starting down this road, I suffered the same problem. I still am a scientist. I get excited by the science. You quickly become confronted with how little traction you get when speaking to individuals that are involved in, startup companies and things by going to some of the mixers. And I know that they exist here in South Dakota and North Dakota. There's a lot of opportunities to meet with these individuals that are representing angel fund companies or whatever the case may be, people who live and breathe this area. If you attend those, they're far more personable than academics are. They'll come up to you unsolicited and just say, oh, hey, why are you here? Or what do you do? And you describe it, and the first time you do that, you see their eyes glaze over, their attention starts to wander. They have no interest in what it is that you're talking about. And by doing this time and time again, you start to see what aspects of the technology actually capture interest, and you can get practice at describing it in a way that's entirely different from a scientific audience, but will definitely help when it goes to creating that pitch. But it's a venue to do it where it's not quite as high stakes. Before you go to a conference and are pitching this thing, having it talked about at these mixers where you're just dealing with, someone who came up and randomly chatted with you is a far less stressful circumstance, but still gets you that same practice. So I would certainly encourage all of those individuals that are able to attend these types of tech mixers, and and we can start sending out information about those through the Professional Development Corps. If you're not on any of the research listservs at your own institutions, but just show up with your idea and be prepared for random people in suits to come up and start talking to you about it, and you'll start to get that experience and be able to judge what works and what doesn't. I found that really useful.
Yeah, I have to agree, Lee, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that you need to, if you're really interested in going this way, you need to have a 90-second, what we call elevator pitch, right? Which describes your idea and why you're doing what you're doing and why it makes sense, and a 5-minute thing. So the elevator pitch, no slides, right? So just you're showing up at a cocktail party. I don't know if they still have those anymore, Lee, but let's assume they do. You're right. You have to convey the passion, and you want to see in the on the other side whether that message is being received. If you start with a simple question like, "Do you have any patents?" And the answer is either yes or no, we're filing them. But if you start this whole process about, "Well, I don't know," and you're like, "Come on, right?" You gotta. The other point I was going to make with respect to this is, you have to be able to speak and convey your idea succinctly. Right? No 2-point footnotes. I see a lot of slides with footnotes, no footnotes, right? I don't care about those sorts of things. Nobody cares about those sorts of things. So you have to be succinct. You've got to be enthusiastic. And this is tough for us. We're scientists, right? We're more interested in, what is the error bar on some piece of data, right? An investor doesn't care about the error bar on a piece of data. So you got to be able to do that. So 5 minutes, good presentation, a tight presentation, and a 90-second elevator pitch you should have in your back pocket.
And I did finally remember what popped into my head the last time, and that was precisely what I was just talking about. There are some NIH-funded entities within the states that are there to help tech commercialization, biotech. So SD Biotech is one of these entities that is a co-sponsor for this event. So certainly reach out to those entities as well. They are there to help in any way that they can, and they have all sorts of programs and all sorts of opportunities for consult. So in addition to what the Professional Development Corps can do and what all of our new friends at NIH are able to do, we do have these entities that are focused on developing and that are regionally specific, so they know what it's like in this specific environment. So they're a great resource as well.
There's a question in the chat, and I wonder who could take that. Certainly not me.
Sorry, I just added my chat. So I have been collaborating the group in Japan, but I'm kind of trying to identify what kind of grant opportunities or even a collaboration with companies that can give us some kind of startup or preliminary budget to further kind of developing those kind of method or device. And this is something related to kind of liquid biopsy and cell-free DNA. And in many cases, like for instance, probably NIH type of grant, it's very hard to include the international collaborator and include some effort, because that would be a kind of money transfer from Japan to the US to Japan. So I'm just wondering how people are kind of dealing with these kind of issues.
I was just going to say for the proof of concept center programs, and I'm not sure about REACH, but NCAI did allow foreign components, and there's certain rules and eligibility surrounding that, so we'd have to look into it. But I did have some sites that had some foreign collaborators. Mike might have more insight on the small business grants and what they allow.
So I just put in the chat a recent notice on foreign collaborations, and the main part that there's just more scrutiny for any foreign component. The SBIR program kind of encourages you to identify someone within the country and demonstrate why you need that foreign component versus someone in the US. And then, you know, my program, we allow foreign collaborators, but the applicant has to be a US, at a US institution.
Thank you so much. I will look into this website.
And I'll mention as well, since we actually don't have anyone from NSF here, they also have specific programs that are designed to strengthen international collaborations. And oftentimes in the health space, we forget that they exist. And I would certainly encourage looking at some of their granting opportunities as well. Obviously there, your pitch is going to be a little bit different. You're going to focus on the basic science aspect of this development, but just looking at what you've described, I think there's definitely an NSF angle to this that you would be able to play up as well. And that could be another potential funding source.
Jonny, do you have something to add from the NCI perspective?
So for SBIR and STTR, it's very difficult to allow foreign component. So generally the money that is given to you under these mechanisms need to be spent within the US. That includes collaborations, consultants, and things like that. We do have one funding opportunity for developing technologies for low resource countries. So that can be either lower middle income countries outside the US, or it can be areas within the US, for example, very kind of isolated rural areas where it can be difficult. And for that particular funding announcement, we do have a bit more flexibility to allow work that has a foreign component, but mainly for kind of testing it, like a point of care device, for example, in the field. Other grant mechanisms, R01, R21s, there I think has more flexibility for the foreign components, and as Mike put in the chat just now, there's a bit more scrutiny regarding these this kind of work, but it is allowed under the other mechanisms.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I have a question. So with regards to the question that was asked before, in terms of like one of the answers was going to different events and having like your 90-second elevator pitch or whatever, talking to different angel, like, wealthier people that might be interested in investing. With regards to IP, let's say you have like an idea and you maybe talk to the tech office, but you don't have like a patent in place yet. What would be like the stringence with regards to being able to discuss what you are working on before you either have a patent or you have talked to the tech office or not? Like if you've talked to the tech office, are you okay with talking about your ideas, or what would be like the protocol there?
In general, if you're going to these open events, I would talk in generalities, Noah. I would just, I wouldn't say, like, for example, I don't know what you're working on, but if it's some, like, I'll just say, I'm working on a small molecule therapy for, triple negative breast cancer, right? And they say, oh, that's really interesting. what is the structure of the molecule? Like, well, I'm not going to tell you. Then that's not what we're ready to discuss because that's confidential. But it's some sort of, you can just give the general class of compounds, right?
Sure.
And we have some data, some very promising data to show that it actually does work better than the current technologies. And actually, that for triple negative breast cancer, there isn't very much stuff out there. That's interesting enough, right? I mean, to somebody to say, and you can say, listen, the reason we're being a little cagey about it is because we haven't yet filed an application. We're still developing the various, side groups and functionalities. Okay, people get that. And then you go to your, to tech transfer officer, and then they should have CDAs or NDAs, and maybe Lee can talk a little bit about this, that they can say, okay, we have these standard forms that are ready to go, and work with them to get that ideas are protected, or at least the disclosure of the ideas are prevented in a way that allows you to still file later. So that would be my
Sure.
And I can add to that most definitely. So yeah, that's precisely right. And I'll steal a term that Beth uses all the time, which is secret sauce. So you want to make sure that you don't give away the secret sauce in those discussions. So, the 11 herbs and spices, if you're KFC, you can say, I have these 11 herbs and spices, and they're wonderful and everyone loves it. You just don't want to say what they are. And when you're having those conversations and you start to see that interest, that's when you would say, well, and if you'd like to discuss this further, we can certainly arrange a time through our tech transfer office to have a more formal meeting. And that's where you have a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA that comes into play where you can have the individuals sign that. I certainly wouldn't recommend showing up at one of these mixers with them in your pocket. You're just engaging interest, practicing those conversations. And then once it moves to the point that people are legitimately interested, that's when you can have that more formal meeting and have the NDAs ready to be signed, and then that protects you in that circumstance. Beth, I don't know if there's anything further than that.
Thank you. That answers my question pretty well.
Any other questions from any of the sites? All right, well, hearing none, unless there's any direct opposition to it, we can certainly end things a little bit early. Contact information for everyone has certainly been provided. I know that Christian just sent around a message not too long ago saying if you would like any of the slide sets, certainly contact him and he can provide those. This whole session has been recorded and we can provide access to that. So, if you had to miss one of the sessions or you thought it was so good, you want to see it again, we can certainly provide access to those. But other than that, certainly encourage people to reach out with any questions that come up. If you don't know who any of the people are or you miss contact information, you can certainly send Christian an email and he can get you in touch with anyone that you would like. And as everyone that's worked with him can attest, he's quite persistent. So he will certainly get you to where you need to be. But other than that, I definitely like to thank everyone that attended. I think this accomplished exactly what we were hoping to. And certainly thank all of our friends at NIH for taking time out of what I know are their busy days to make this possible. And also, of course, Beth at our tech transfer office for being involved. I think it's been a great resource for both our professional development core scholars and then general people associated with the DaCCoTA in one way or another to at least just start thinking about these things. Dr. Prakash, I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Just that, I want to thank all of you, Lee and Christian and Beth, you've done a fantastic job. Just to say that, listen, we want you to be successful. That is our only goal. All of us, Lee, Beth, Christian, all of us at the NIH, Jonny, all of us want you to be successful. So you have resources available, unlike in the old days. So please use them and get your stuff out there. Let patients benefit from your ideas and technologies, which is what we care about. Thank you.
Christian, anything that we have to take care of? Any last words?
I have no further thoughts other than keep rocking the research. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Well, thank you all, and hopefully we will be in touch.
Have a good Wednesday, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.